Lego's been around for almost 100 years, and a lot has happened in that time. So these are 2 hours of Lego facts to fall asleep to. Starting with the complete takeover of stickers. This is everyone's least favorite part of a Lego set. You try your best to get it on straight, just like how it is in the instructions, but it's always just a little bit off. These things have gotten way more common in today's sets, but it wasn't always like this. Lego fans all over the internet talk about how it feels like there are way more stickers in sets than there ever used to be. But finding the actual evidence is pretty difficult. The best I got is this picture of a tile piece that I don't even know the name of, but it's a perfect example of what's been going on. Another element that's been phased out over the years are wires, but this one is probably for the best. These days, most of the motors are battery powered, but back in the day, they had to be hooked up to a power source just so they could run. They were mostly used in the power functions theme, and since it started back in 2008, it makes sense why Lego wasn't really making wireless stuff yet. A big change that was hiding right under our noses though, was the disappearance of fabric capes. These things were in basically every set I wanted when I was a kid. Jedis wore capes, and so did superheroes, so I was putting these things on minifigures all the time back in the day. As of recently though, Lego's been starting to phase them out. A bunch of different minifigures have rubber capes now. There's Batman in the Harley Quinn and Mr. Freeze fight set, Magneto in the X-Men Mansion set, and Thor in the Thor vs. Surtur construction figure set. As cool as these pieces look, they kind of limit what Lego's able to do with them. Back in the 1990s, they introduced this multicolored dragon cape in the system theme, which looks sick, but if they tried to do this with the new rubber capes, I feel like it wouldn't look as good. I guess this update is kind of hit or miss, but this next one was an absolute downgrade, no doubt. Do you notice how there aren't really any shiny pieces in Lego anymore? There used to be a bunch of them, on lightsaber hilts, vintage crowns for the castle theme, and even on certain minifigures, but we just don't get them anymore. Luckily, there is an actual explanation for this one. Basically, because the paint Lego was using wasn't the best quality, it peeled off pretty fast. So at one point or another, they just started using a color called metal light gray for silver, and a bunch of different ones for gold. They don't look anywhere near as good, and to be honest, I feel like Lego should have just found a better chrome paint to use. Am I spinning here? I feel like that definitely would have been the better move, but let me know what you think. Moving on from chrome pieces though, Lego actually made a super small update to their bricks somewhat recently. After they patented the stud and tube coupling system in 1958, the bricks were much better at keeping themselves together. But looking at this brick today, something just seems off about it, right? Well, it's because they hadn't added the support beams to the tubes yet. This became very common around 2008, so it makes sense why when I look at bricks that don't have these beams, they almost look naked. Lego doesn't just make tiny updates to pieces though, they do it to minifigures too. Back in the early 2000s, you could buy a magnetic minifigure that didn't have this giant brick podium underneath it. They made a few different sets, but the most popular one was the Lego Batman set. But what was wrong with these minifigures? If they were so cool, why did they end up changing it? Well, the magnets were actually little pieces in the back of the minifigure's legs, and once parents of young kids found out about it, they weren't too happy. Lego had to stop making magnetic minifigures this way because it was a choking hazard, which is honestly a shame. The seamless look these Batman minifigures have compared to the ones we have now is so much better. Depending on what you're looking at, sometimes the old Lego really was just better. And a perfect example of that is what Lego did to the box design for Lego Castle. The castle theme always had a blue sky with clouds in the background on the box. It was a super nice design for the theme, and it was a surefire way to know that you were buying a castle set. Lego Castle has actually been retired since 2016 now, but because of how famous it was, they turned it into a sub-theme of the Icon series in 2022. Now, I don't have any problems with the sets in this sub-theme. In fact, I think the Lion Knight's castle is one of the coolest Lego castles ever, but every set in the Icons theme comes in a blacked out box. Now, they didn't do that for this set in particular, but if you're going to change the design on the box, why not give it the classic blue sky that everyone knows and loves? This change didn't really make sense to me, but Lego fans had it way worse than this before 1990. This is going to sound crazy, but Lego didn't make the first brick separator until that year. So before then, if you had two 1x2 plate pieces stacked on top of each other, you were basically cooked. But even then, we didn't get the one we have now until 2011. For some reason, all they did was change the color a few different times over the years, then come out of nowhere with the orange one in 2011. If you were playing with Lego before the 90s, you definitely would have noticed this update. So let me show you something I guarantee you haven't noticed. This is a transparent brick. Looks pretty good, right? Well, what if I told you that this is actually an old design, and that most of the transparent bricks these days look like this? Yeah, I know. This downgrade is up there with the chrome change. I mean, why would you want to make transparent bricks less transparent? Now, don't get me wrong, certain sets have bricks that are super see-through, but that's definitely not the case for all of them. I can't lie, I've been hating on LEGO pretty hard with these last few updates, so let me show you one that was actually one of the best moves they've ever made. Obviously, we all know how LEGO instructions work. You look at the page and it tells you what to do. But back in the day, this was definitely not the case. These are a couple pages of instructions for set 948 from 1978. I mean, this is basically a free-for-all. There are a few arrows pointing you in the right direction, but for the most part, you're completely on your own. This isn't even as bad as it gets, though. Let me show you the difference between the original Forest Men hideout set from 1988 versus the remastered one from 2022. These are a few pages from the 2022 version. Nothing out of the ordinary, of course. But look at the pages from the one from 1988. I mean, this is just crazy. The difference between page 2 and 4 is out of this world, and they barely even told you anything. Like I said, this update was 100% needed, so let's take a look at another one. This is a police officer minifigure from 1978, but I bet you already knew that. This guy looks old. There isn't a whole lot going on with this minifigure, so when you compare it to one of the police officers we have today, it's a night and day difference. I'd be super surprised if any of you missed this change over the years, but I had to throw it in here, because imagine LEGO released a minifigure with this amount of detail today. There'd be an entire mob outside their HQ. Something people should riot over, though, is LEGO taking away light-up bricks. Specifically, light-up lightsabers for LEGO Star Wars. I've been a LEGO Star Wars fan my whole life, and I completely missed this update. Back in the early 2000s, they released a special type of Star Wars minifigure. All you had to do was put a stud on the back of the hilt and push the head down. Then the lightsaber would come to life. I genuinely can't believe I missed something as cool as this, especially since I literally could have gotten some when I was a kid. But I guess it just goes to show how sneaky LEGO can be. Another element they added then slowly took away like this were Legoland pamphlets showing off their new sets. I'm not exactly sure when they started putting these in boxes, and honestly, I'm not even sure when they stopped. All I do know is that they did it before and they don't do it now. Pretty much every single one of these pamphlets is considered to be vintage LEGO, which means they probably haven't done it since before the year 2000. These pamphlets had all sorts of cool looking promo for sets that were coming out soon. Like, look at this one I found on eBay. There's promo for sets from a bunch of different themes. Space, pirates, Technic, it's all the classics. This wasn't the only thing that was common with old boxes though. LEGO also used to show off a bunch of different ways to build a set on the box. I'm not talking about a 3-in-1 set though, where the entire point is to build it one way, take it apart, and build it another way with the help of instructions. These builds were put there purely to spark the imagination. These days, it kind of feels like LEGO only makes sets that are meant to be built once, then put on display. But back in the day, they were super dedicated to the play features, and wanted people to make all sorts of cool stuff with their bricks, no matter what the instructions said. We don't really see that too often these days, and I doubt they're ever bringing it back. But if there's anything that LEGO was doing before that they might actually bring back one day, it's what I'm about to show you next. Back in the 90s, LEGO collabed with Kellogg's, the cereal brand. And I'm not too sure what gets put in cereal boxes these days, but back in my day, there was always some cool toy or prize that you had a chance of winning. The only way to find out was to open the box and pray. And back in the 90s, you might have gotten lucky enough to see a polybag for a Toucan Sam set fall out. It wasn't just him though. You also had a chance of winning Tony the Tiger or the Keebler Man. All three of these sets are super uncommon now, and I wasn't even born when they were around. But this is something I could definitely see LEGO coming back to. Something they're absolutely never doing again though is painting directly onto pieces instead of using a print. Let me show you what I mean. Not too long ago, it wasn't uncommon for LEGO to use paint on certain pieces. They did this a lot with head accessories for minifigures, but the most obvious ones were the headdresses in the LEGO Indians theme. This design is clearly painted on, not printed, and it's become so rare that a certain minifigure in LEGO Star Wars is worth an insane amount of money, simply because the headpiece was painted. It's in the Cloud City set, which was already exclusive, so that definitely helps drive up the price. But I'm talking about the Boba Fett minifigure. The design on his helmet was painted on, instead of printed, like how most minifigures were in 2003. This is the only Boba Fett minifigure that has this design style, and because of it, it's worth over $2,000. And the set it's in is worth over $8,000. Like I said though, I don't think they're ever bringing this back. And another thing that's in the same boat are 32 by 32 base plates. At one point or another, LEGO completely phased out adding base plates to their sets, and it's been like this for so long that I bet you didn't even know they did it in the first place. Literally the only theme that still has them is the modular buildings theme, and that's because if they didn't, the sets wouldn't be modular. From the 1970s to the 1990s, LEGO was including these things in a bunch of different sets. It's in the police headquarters from 1979, the Shell service station from 1983, the airport set from 1985, and way more. It's been in 102 different sets in total, most of which were released in that 20-year period. So it's safe to say that if it's not modular, it's not getting one of these base plates. We can all agree that it'd be nice to have a few of these things laying around. But sometimes LEGO makes something super sick, adds it to a few sets, then retires it for good. Back in 1993, they released the Imperial flagship set in the Pirates theme. And as cool as the ship is, I want to focus on just one singular piece. You see this compass right here? It might look like a regular printed compass piece, but it actually works. This was the first set to ever have this piece, but the thing is, only 9 other sets in LEGO history have ever included this piece. The last ones being the Spaniard ship and the pirate battleship in 2001. This piece never got the love it deserved, and as cool as it is, I don't think it ever will. LEGO put this thing in the vault a long time ago, and I doubt it'll ever be featured in a set again. The LEGO brick is one of the most recognizable toys in the entire world, but the road for LEGO to get here has been anything but easy. From bankruptcy scares, failed ideas, and even legal trouble, LEGO's had to jump through all kinds of hoops to get to where they are today. But how did they do it? How in the world did a plastic brick manage to become the most recognizable toy on the planet? Well, it all started when the founder of LEGO, Ole Kirk Christensen, made the switch from wooden toys to plastic toys in 1949. Before this, Ole Kirk had just been making wooden toys by hand, which at the time was what everyone wanted. He was 58 years old at the time, so a calming hobby like this was perfect for someone who had been working all their life, but still wanted to do something creative with their time. So if wooden toys were so popular, how and why did he make the switch from stuff like this to plastic bricks? Well, in 1946, he attended a demonstration of a plastic injection molding machine in Copenhagen, and was super impressed with it. So much so that he even invested in Denmark's first plastic molding machine, a British-made Windsor injector, which got to Billund in late 1947. So even though Ole Kirk was a little old, he was no regular old man. He kept his ear to the ground and was extremely open to new things, which is probably the only reason LEGO was ever able to take off in the first place. Imagine if he was just some angry old man who wanted nothing to do with the modern world. We never would have grown up with LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, and Toys R Us would have been a lot emptier. But clearly, he was interested. And 1 year later, in 1947, he and his son Godfred would come across something that completely altered the course of LEGO. They were able to get some samples of a British toy brick called self-locking building bricks. They were made by a man named Hilary Fisher Page, who owned his own toy company called Kittycraft. But once Ole Kirk saw these bricks, he knew he had to get a horse in the race. Now, I'm not trying to say that he stole the brick idea from Page. A lot of companies were making plastic bricks at the time. There was Kittycraft, Mini Bricks, Build-O-Brick, American Bricks, Baco Building Bricks. You get the idea. There were a lot of them. Everyone was racing to make the best plastic bricks possible. And it just so happened that LEGO was able to win. But honestly, they never should have been able to. These other companies had been patenting and releasing toy bricks since the 1930s and 40s. While Ole Kirk was still messing around with a whittle and a block of wood. But to top it all off, Ole Kirk was the only one in his family who actually believed in the product. Even after LEGO started releasing sets in 1950, Godfred and his brothers were trying to convince their dad that wooden toys were the golden standard, and that there was no reason to dive headfirst into making plastic toys. To this, Ole Kirk said, and I quote, "Have you no faith? If we get this right, we can sell these bricks all over the world." I don't know if this guy could see into the future or what, because he was absolutely right. He had an unsettling amount of faith that plastic toys were the future. Even though the sets at the time weren't selling very well, customer satisfaction was mediocre, and they were getting returns all the time. But Ole Kirk didn't let it get to him, and kept pushing LEGO through the mud. Let's rewind to 1949 though, so I can tell you the origin story of the first LEGO brick. After Ole Kirk and Godfred saw those samples in 1947, it took them 2 years to finally come out with bricks of their own, known as automatic binding bricks. And you won't believe what they named them after. They used the word automatic to pay homage to the automatic weapons that were used to liberate Europe in World War II. I swear, it's literally on the LEGO website. They changed the name to LEGO Merston later on, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I just needed you to know the story behind that decision. These automatic binding bricks were sold in nice boxes, but only made extremely small sets. LEGO didn't have anywhere near the capital they needed to start expanding, for obvious reasons. So they started out with stuff like the gift packages and bags selling individual pieces. Like I said, they weren't selling very well, and the family was having some doubts. But by 1953, Godfred had a leading role in LEGO, and this is when he decided to change the name from Automatic Binding Bricks to LEGO Merston. That same year, he also started having the word LEGO molded on every stud on every brick. So at some point between 1949 and 1953, Godfred started to see the vision. He wasn't done though. He wanted to make his father's dream of selling these bricks all over the world come true. So he got a licensing deal with a Norwegian company that allowed them to produce LEGO locally. This was their first step into the international market, and by the mid-1950s, they were already selling sets to neighboring Nordic countries. Things were starting to look really good for LEGO, but there was one problem that they'd been ignoring for quite some time. The reason customer satisfaction was mediocre was because one of the biggest complaints was that the bricks didn't stay together very well. At this point, LEGO's entire brand was built around bricks, and yet they had been making and selling a version that wasn't the best quality. It took another 5 years, but in 1958, they finally decided that enough was enough. In January of that year, Godfred had a meeting with a man named Axel Thompson, who was the head of LEGO sales in Germany. The goal of this meeting was to sit down, put their heads together, and come up with a new system that was easy to implement and completely fix the problem they were having. This was when Godfred had a revolutionary idea that was critical for LEGO to grow. His idea was to add 2 internal tubes on the inside of the bricks and connect the studs on top of every brick into these tubes. The head of the mold shop, Ove Nielsen, made a prototype within a day, but to Godfred's surprise, it just wasn't good enough. He went on a trip to Copenhagen to talk to patent lawyers, and during this trip, he finally got the perfect idea. Instead of having 2 tubes on a 2x4 brick, he'd have 3. That way, the studs can slip in between the tubes and have even more friction than they did before. He ran to Ove as soon as he was back, got a prototype, and on January 28, 1958, officially patented the stud and tube coupling system for toy building bricks. A lot of people consider this to be LEGO's birthday, since this is the design they've been using all this time, and unfortunately, Old Kirk never got to see just how successful this idea would become. He died of a heart attack in March of 1958, but his dream lived on. Now, you'd think this would be the end of the story of the brick, but there was a lot more work left to do. They had this new brick that they knew would revolutionize plastic toys. But that's the thing, they were the only ones who knew about it. The coming years would be all about expansion and perfecting the brick as much as humanly possible, and it started with the packaging. In 1958 and 1959, LEGO was making catalogs and adding diagrams to boxes showing off their new innovation. It was the easiest way to tell people how much better LEGO bricks had gotten without making them buy anything. With these new bricks, sets started flying off the shelves, and an idea that Godfred had in 1955 was finally starting to see some success. The LEGO System in Play theme. This is quite literally the first theme LEGO ever made. Some people might tell you that Merston was a theme, but that's just what it's considered now, not what it was back then. Godfred had launched this project with no real way to make it successful, but now that the bricks were way better quality, the sets were finally starting to sell. It was at this point that LEGO finally decided that wooden toys were a thing of the past. Up until 1960, they actually still had a wooden toys department. Godfred was running the plastic side, and his brothers all had different roles in the wooden side. The thing is though, right after they made this decision, a warehouse that had all of the leftover inventory of wooden toys burned to the ground, which, if you ask me, was a clear sign that Godfred had made the right decision. From here, it was time to expand. In 1961, LEGO made a deal with Samsonite to start selling LEGO in the United States and Canada, and by the mid-1960s, you could buy LEGO all across Europe, North America, and farther. This deal was crucial for LEGO, because if they were stuck selling in Denmark, they never would have been able to get to where they are today. At this point, they were selling tens of millions of bricks every year, so with the money, they wanted to improve the brick even more than they already did in 1958. In 1963, they changed the material that the bricks were made of. Up until then, they'd been using a certain type of plastic called cellulose acetate. It was great for where they were at before, but it lost its color pretty fast, warped a little too easily, and overall just wasn't going to cut it anymore. The new material they switched to was called acrylon triobutadiene. You know what, let's just call it ABS for short. And it was an absolute success. This type of plastic held its color for way longer and took a lot more time to warp. but there was another upside that they didn't even realize they'd get. Because of how much better the material was, it made their moldings accurate to 1/200th of a millimeter, which is basically perfect. With this, the design from 1958 could truly flourish. It was already perfect, but with the new mold accuracy, it was even better. Everything was going super well, but a super big problem that comes with expanding like this is quality control. However, Godfred was a step ahead. A few years back in 1961, he hired Hans Scheiss, a Swiss plastic expert, to help with the material, which is probably why LEGO made that huge switch in 1963. Godfred also put together an entire team dedicated to quality control. The only job for people in this department was to inspect and test every product LEGO planned on putting out, so they could be absolutely positive that it was worthy of being put on the shelves. This was probably one of the best moves they could have possibly made. Because of this team, LEGO's manufacturing error rate was only 13 defective parts per million. In other words, only 0.0013% of the parts LEGO made were defective. They were truly chasing perfection, and with these three moves, the new material, Hans Scheiss, the quality control department, LEGO made sure that their toys felt premium. They wanted their stuff to be a cut above the rest, and it absolutely was. The craziest part about all of this is that they hadn't even really taken off yet. The space theme, the pirates theme, minifigures, all of this wouldn't come out until 1978, and yet LEGO was still making moves like they were a billion-dollar company. The 2x4 brick is literally the only reason LEGO was able to become as successful as they are today, so it's only right that you know the story of how it came to be. But how did LEGO expand beyond the brick? Obviously, we know that we have way more pieces than that now, but where did they start? Well, the biggest milestone would have to be 1962, when they started making tires. LEGO cars are some of the most successful sets ever, and they started making them way back in the 60s, so of course they were going to need tires to put on the cars. Another huge milestone was the first set with a 4.5 volt motor. It's supposed to be a set of a little train, but because they didn't have that many pieces to work with, it didn't really end up looking like one. After this, though, came LEGO Duplo in 1969. This theme was made specifically for toddlers, so instead of the bricks you'd usually see in a LEGO set, they made giant ones to not only avoid choking hazards, but also because a toddler's brain might have a little trouble with regular-sized bricks. This was LEGO's last big move in the 1960s, but the 1970s just might be the most monumental decade for LEGO ever, and it's all because of one year. 1978. In the early and mid-70s, LEGO was actually starting to struggle a little bit. They'd been making a lot of the same stuff for over 20 years, and people were just starting to get bored. They needed something new, but something that still felt like LEGO. 1978 was not only the birth of minifigures, but it was also the birth of the town theme, the pirates theme, the space theme, and the castle theme. Literally all 5 of these went on to be some of the most popular stuff LEGO's ever made. I mean, one of the most expensive LEGO sets is quite literally the first castle in the castle theme. I'm not going to go too far into this stuff, so if you want to learn about it, go watch my video on the evolution of LEGO sets. But before you go, there's one last milestone I have to mention. Licensed LEGO sets. Licensed sets are probably the biggest reason why modern day LEGO does as well as it does. It gave us LEGO Star Wars, LEGO Disney, LEGO Toy Story, the list goes on forever. Combining people's favorite TV shows and movies with LEGO is probably one of the best business moves they ever made. The Christansons were clearly put on this earth to give us LEGO, especially Godfred. I mean, that guy is the only reason we have what we have now. But none of it would have happened if old Kirk never took a life-changing bet on the brick. Up first is one of the coolest references in all of LEGO, and it's in the LEGO Ninjago City Garden set. This is one of the biggest sets in the entire Ninjago theme, so as a result, it also has an insane amount of Easter eggs and references. But the one I want to show you is actually this gray minifigure sitting all by itself. All the die-hard Ninjago fans probably got this off rip, but this is actually a memorial for Zane, one of the 6 main ninjas in the Ninjago TV show. He actually died way more than once, but because of how significant it was, the designers gave him his very own memorial. The only thing better than references like these is when LEGO references other themes in their sets, like what they did in the Indiana Jones Temple of the Golden Idol set. This set is super small, so you'd think it'd be pretty difficult to slip a reference in here, but it's actually hiding in plain sight. The set shows Indy doing what he does best, stealing treasure from underground. But if you have Jimmy Neutron level LEGO knowledge, you might have noticed something on the wall where the Golden Idol is sitting. One of the faces is actually a King Kahuka mask from the LEGO Islander Universe theme, which hasn't been around since 2001. There's also a funny little minifigure head sticking his tongue out on the other side, which is pretty funny. But to catch that Islanders mask, you'd really need to know your stuff. There's no way you know this next one though. Apparently, it's impossible to subscribe to my channel in 3 seconds or less, so let's put it to the test. I'm gonna start a timer, so if you can do it, let me know down in the comments. Ready? Go. Now that that's done, let's move on to the next reference. A few years ago, Tiago Catarino left LEGO for personal reasons and ended up becoming a super well-known LEGO YouTuber. When he worked at LEGO, he designed the ship in a bottle set and left a little tile piece with his initials TC on the set. Fast forward a couple years later, and he actually has his very own gravestone piece that's been featured in 2 different sets. The first one is the Haunted House set from 2020, which Tiago helped with before he left. To honor his work at LEGO, his designer friends made that tombstone piece and put him in the front yard to honor his memory and everything he did at LEGO. It's a funny joke, since of course he isn't dead, but the second set this piece is in is the Titanic. Before Tiago left LEGO, he actually pitched a LEGO Titanic idea to them, and not too long after, an official set was released. Tiago wasn't taking any credit for this, but then he saw that very same gravestone piece in the instructions, and how else could you react besides being super excited? LEGO designers include themselves in their sets all the time, like Tiago did with the Haunted House. But nobody does it quite like Chris McVie. Chris started working at LEGO in 2019, and one of his most well-known sets is the modular police station set. Not only does it have the super famous laundromat billboard reference, but there are tons of play features too. But the best part by far is how Chris slipped himself into this set. There seems to be a donut thief on the loose, stealing all of the cops' favorite food. But if we take a look at this minifigure, then look at this picture of Chris, something's going on here. Are you telling me that the donut thief has been Chris McVie the whole time? This is a super funny cameo, but the modular buildings theme is full of cool stuff like this, like the one in the boutique hotel set. This is the 16th set in the modular building series, but did you know that 20 of these sets were designed by the LEGO creator experts? These are some of the most talented people at LEGO, and this is actually the team that Tiago presented the Titanic idea to back in 2019. They've made sets like the Manchester United Stadium from 2020, the Porsche 911 from 2021, the Taj Mahal from 2017, the list goes on and on. Not too many people knew about this theme before the Titanic set was released, and after that huge success, they probably wanted to pay themselves some respect. And to do that, they included a brick-built version of the creator expert logo in the boutique hotel set. These other 2 builds are also references, but the whole point was that it looks like a mini art gallery. And I have to say, the creator expert logo fits right in. Another set with seamless references that you never know about is the Lion Knights Castle set. This is LEGO's modern take on the super famous castle theme, and honestly, the set looks really good. It's a giant gray castle with knights, wizards, forestmen, and so many more iconic minifigures, but the references are hiding inside. This castle can actually be open on the backside, and if you look at the top room on the second from the right side, these weird yellow bricks might ring a bell. Well, it's because they're actually a mini brick-built version of the now $10,000 yellow castle set from 1979. It's by far one of LEGO's most famous sets, so it's no wonder the designers referenced it here. However, I did say there were multiple references, and the second one is a lot easier to find with the castle closed. On the right side of the castle, you'll see this giant tree with a beehive in it, and because of the minifigures in this set, we know who this tree belongs to. The Forestmen are most famously known for their hideouts, so of course LEGO had to include one in this set. You can actually flip the rocks sitting on the water and find that little hideout, but it doesn't end there. Once this is open, you can also slide the back wall of a prison cell over, showing that a particular cell has a major defect. This is definitely one of the coolest play features LEGO's made recently. But switching gears, I actually want to take you back to the LEGO Ninjago City Garden set. Like I said, there are loads of Easter eggs and references in this set. But did you know there's a literal Easter egg in this set? Okay, I guess it's not exactly literal, like the one in the Atari set. But do you see all these tile pieces with Japanese writing? Well, one of them actually directly translates to Easter egg, which is pretty sick. But why is this tile piece even here? And where can you find it? Well, you actually have to completely remove this little ninja shop, and you'll find it sitting underneath it. That isn't it though. This tile was covering a gray box with a 1x1 green transparent piece, and this is by far one of the deepest cuts I've seen in a LEGO set. set. This singular piece is actually a reference to a giant cyberpunk city made by Brolug that was on display at Brickworld in Chicago in 2013. Now, Brolug was actually a group of people that made huge builds like this one. And from what I can find, the designer of Ninjago City Gardens, Marcus Rollbuehler, was never in the group. So I guess he made the reference simply because he liked the build. It all started with that Japanese tile piece though. And funnily enough, there are pieces like this in a bunch of different sets, like the LEGO Star Wars Cantina. I'm talking about this piece with R2-D2 and C-3PO on it, with a line of this weird language on top. This isn't just some weird language though. It's Arabesh, the most spoken language in the Star Wars universe. It translates to the word wanted, which actually makes perfect sense for this set. In A New Hope, an Imperial spy named Garandan Ez Zavor was informing the Empire about Luke and everyone he was with, and he actually got his own minifigure in the set. In the movie, everyone escapes safely, but as a result, the two droids ended up on the Empire's wanted list. This is probably because Darth Vader heard about what happened on Tatooine and wanted to get his hands on them immediately. After all, they are his old friends. Not that they'd be happy to see him after what happened though. Yeesh. Anyways, the next references I want to show you are in the LEGO Seinfeld set. This set dropped back in 2021, and as cool as it is, I actually want to show you the fridge. It's decked out with magnets, with the most obvious one being Superman. This one is here just like it is in the real show, but there's a specific picture on the LEGO fridge that isn't on the real one, and it really stands out. I'm talking about this random dude. Like me, you might be wondering who this guy is. Well, his name is Larry David, and he's actually one of the main people that helped Jerry Seinfeld produce the show. Props to LEGO for showing David some love. I guess he just wasn't cool enough to get his face on the fridge in the real show. But then again, he's not Superman. Up next is the fact that this Women of NASA set is a reference in and of itself. The set features 4 women: Nancy Grace Roman, Margaret Hamilton, Sally Ride, and Mae Jemison. All of these women played critical roles in getting NASA to where it is today. Whether it be astronomy, engineering, physics, you name it, and one of these 4 women probably did it. Now, let me direct your attention to Margaret Hamilton. Her big role was being a computer programmer, which for the 1960s is a huge deal. If it wasn't for her, NASA literally never would have been able to get Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. So they have her to thank. Now, about that reference. Her build in LEGO might look like nothing, but it's actually referencing this picture of her standing next to her source code for the Apollo guidance computer in 1969. It's by far her most famous picture, so it only makes sense that LEGO would honor it in this set. While I'm talking about space, let me show you some super discreet references in the LEGO Galaxy Explorer from 2022. Just like the Cantina and Ninjago City Garden sets, the tile pieces in here have some super sick references. Since this set is a spaceship, there are a lot of different computer screens on the inside. Now, you'd think these would just have random fake planets on them, or maybe even binary code, but 2 of them in particular are way cooler than that. One of them is this radar scanner piece, and if you know your LEGO themes, you'll know that this is actually the Blacktron logo. Blacktron is the name of the villain group in the space theme, so this logo fits perfectly into this set. The second tile piece is in the living quarters in the back of the ship, but instead of a radar scanner, it's actually supposed to be a live video feed. Now, this may look like literally nothing, but this giant circle thing is actually a Tahoe canister from Bionicle. It looks like this video feed is one of the astronauts finding life on another planet, which is a little funny, since Bionicle's been dead for a while now. Getting back down to Earth, there's actually a really cool reference hiding in the attic of the LEGO Disney Castle set from 2016. Disney's made a million different spin-offs and characters since they started back in 1923, so the amount of references that could be here is off the charts. However, the designers chose a really specific movie to reference: Fantasia. This movie is from 1940 and is a lot different from regular Disney movies. Instead of your regular story, there are 8 different segments that all look completely different and tell a different story. And of course, Mickey Mouse is in his magical outfit, which came from this movie. Now, if we make our way to the attic of the LEGO set, we can actually see Mickey's Fantasia hat sitting in a chest in storage. It doesn't fit on his head or anything, which honestly would have been really cool, but the fact that Fantasia got referenced at all is pretty crazy. Another set with references that are high in the sky is the LEGO Tree of Creativity set. If you've never seen this set before, don't worry, you're not going crazy. It was originally given to people who went to the LEGO Inside Tour back in 2017, but then it was later sold at the LEGO House in Denmark, so it's no wonder you've never seen it on the shelves. The craziest part about this set, though, isn't the fact that it's super rare, and it isn't the fact that there are references to LEGO themes all over it. It's the fact that it's a mini version of the real LEGO Tree of Creativity. Yes, that's actually a thing. The reason this set was sold in the LEGO House is because that's actually where you can find the real tree. It's over 45 feet tall and made up of over 6 million bricks. Just like its mini counterpart, there are smaller builds all over the leaves, but the most notable one is the crane at the top. Just like Margaret Hamilton in the Women of NASA set, the Tree of Creativity is a reference in and of itself, but this last one is a classic LEGO Easter egg. It's hidden in the Penguin set, and just like how it is with most Easter eggs, it's literally nowhere to be found. But this one is actually hidden under the set, just like that insane reference in the Ninjago City Garden set. You have to take literally everything off, but once you do, you'll find a very fitting snowflake. LEGO does this a lot in their small seasonal sets, like this carrot hiding in the Easter Bunny set, or this bat hiding in the owl set for Halloween. This just proves that no matter how small the set is, there's always something to find. Besides those sets from the Coca-Cola soccer theme, there's literally nothing in those. In the LEGO Spider-Man Ultimate Bridge Battle set, if you think you know all the Easter eggs and references in this set, guess again, because as random as this 1962 piece may look, it's a reference to something that only true Spider-Man fans would know. 1962 is actually the year when Spider-Man was first seen in a comic book. He was featured in Amazing Fantasy Volume 15 way back in the day, so I highly doubt you've ever seen him before. There's no way you know about this reference, but some of the other secrets in this video are even harder to spot, so make sure you watch all the way until the end. Up next is actually a secret second part to an Easter egg that's already super famous, and it's in the LEGO Mario Question Block set. Since this set is based on a video game, there are loads of Easter eggs you can find, but one of the most famous ones is the fact that you can pull up a tab on the front of the set and find a mini brick-built Bowser. As crazy as it sounds, this Easter egg actually has a second part. To find it, all you have to do is push down on the platform that Bowser is standing on, and an entirely separate compartment will pop out at the bottom. The coolest thing about this second part is that it's a huge reference in and of itself. In Super Mario N64, the only way Mario can beat Bowser is if he picks him up by his tail and spins him around. And with this secret platform, you can actually recreate that, which is super sick. Now, this next one is definitely weird. I'm not sure why, but apparently you can't subscribe to this channel in 3 seconds or less. I'm gonna start a timer, and if you can subscribe, let me know down in the comments. Ready? Go! Did it work? I hope it did, because I have to move on to the next secret detail. Most of the time, the craziest references in LEGO are in the pieces, especially for sets like the Daily Bugle. But this time, I have one for you that's hidden in a minifigure. This set is notorious for how many minifigures it comes with, which of course I'm not complaining about, but it makes it super easy to miss a certain detail. The Jonah Jameson minifigure has 2 faceplates on his headpiece, and one of them is a reference to a very specific scene in the movies. LEGO doesn't even advertise this on the website, so you'd literally never know he had 2. But the second faceplate is him with webs over his mouth. If you don't know the Spider-Man movies like the back of your hand, this probably went right over your head. But in Spider-Man from 2002, there's a scene where the Green Goblin attacks Jameson inside the Daily Bugle. Luckily for him, Peter was just in his office, so Spider-Man was able to get in between the two of them. However, as usual, Jameson starts running his mouth, and instead of just telling him to shut up, Spider-Man webs his mouth shut so he can't talk anymore. This was a super funny scene in the movie, and I love that the designers brought that moment over to the set. I mean, they were super dedicated. The designers leave hidden messages, like the one in the LEGO Ideas typewriter set. Since this set is in LEGO Ideas, that means it was made by a fan, and that fan's name is Steve Guinness. Instead of the typical initials that you'll usually see, like on the license plate of the James Bond car set, Guinness used this as a chance to send a message to anybody who might build his set. On the back, there's something that looks like a serial number, but these letters actually stand for something. The first 2 are his initials, but the letters that follow stand for never give up on your dreams. And honestly, this is probably the best message you can send to anybody. It sounds corny, but it packs a punch. I mean, I'm chasing my dreams right now just by making this video. So to keep things going, let me show you an Easter egg in the LEGO Atari set. If you've watched videos on LEGO Easter eggs, then you've probably seen the secret Mario level in the NES set. And this Atari one is actually pretty similar. Instead of taking a panel off like how you do for the NES, instead you just pull the flat part of the Atari forward. And when you go far enough, a cool little living room will pop up. It looks like it's supposed to be a typical kid's room back when this console first came out, but I can't be too sure. I mean, I'm not old or anything. Regardless, this is a really cool Easter egg, especially because it's basically a play feature. But there's a certain type of Easter egg in LEGO sets that's a cut above the rest. I'm talking about when LEGO throws in Easter eggs that were made in real life, like when they put the A113 logo in the Cars spy plane set, except the one I want to show you is way more well known. I'm talking about hidden Mickeys, and in case you've never heard of them, they're basically Easter eggs in real life. If you go to any Disney theme park, you can find these things hidden throughout the entire park. People go crazy looking for them, to the point where they even try to find and count every single one at every park. But what set did LEGO throw a hidden Mickey into? Well, the answer is Elsa's castle, which is low-key kinda crazy if I'm being honest. I wouldn't expect a set this small and underhyped to have an Easter egg this meaningful, but maybe that was just LEGO trying to make it harder to find. Because the harder it is to find, the more rewarding it feels. And the knowledge you need to understand the Apollo 11 lander is probably something a lot of us don't have. The details in this set are unmatched. I especially love the little minifigure footprints on the moon. But what I want to show you is actually hidden inside the lander. If you take off the top part of the set, you can see two barrels sitting near the middle, one white and one red. Well, these barrels are actually supposed to carry fuel for the rocket and an oxidizer. I just learned this right now, but apparently it's impossible to use fuel in space without an oxidizer. So not only is this set made to minifigure scale, but it's super accurate to the real world. With stuff like this, you can tell that LEGO really cares about people. But there's a new feature with certain sets that takes this meaning to a whole new level, and it's hiding in plain sight. LEGO just recently collabed with Hidden Sunflowers, a company that originated in England. They're an organization that helps people with non-visible disabilities discreetly let people know that they have one, and all they have to do is wear a sunflower lanyard. LEGO announced the collab late last year, and there are already 3 sets that feature minifigures with these lanyards. There's one in the LEGO Friends Heart Lake City Airport set, one in the up-and-coming First Time at the Airport set from LEGO Duplo, and the last one is hidden in the 2-door corner set in the Modular Buildings theme. If you take a look in the loft apartment, you'll find a tile piece on the wall with a little sunflower lanyard printed on it. The girl who lives in this apartment in the LEGO world is neurodivergent, so she lets people know by wearing her lanyard. This Easter egg has made this apartment pretty famous, but there's another LEGO apartment that's way more famous than this one, the LEGO Friends set. Obviously, this set is famous because of the show, but did you know that LEGO has an entire page on their website where they show you a ton of references in the set? LEGO claims that only the truest of Friends fans would be able to spot every reference, but by far the hardest one to know about were the chicken and duck pieces. These 2 pieces were in Joey and Chandler's apartment, and for those of you that don't get the reference, these 2 guys actually adopted a chick and a duck in season 3 of the show. Now, even though there are way more that I could talk about, I don't want to bore you guys with a bunch of Friends references. So instead, I'm going to show you some rapid-fire Easter eggs from the LEGO Movie 2 Apocalypseburg set. Since it's from a post-apocalyptic world, the designers reused a ton of LEGO elements from different sets, since the characters had to rebuild their own place to live. Number 1 is this design at the top of the set, which is actually a reference to LEGO Bionicle. Number 2 is the fact that LEGO used part of the giant truck set from 1996. Number 3 are these structures right here that look like they're straight from Ready Player One. Number 4 is that this gray piece is actually the engine from Hulk's car in the Hulk vs. Red Hulk set. And number 5 is that this piece right here is actually from the front of the Batmobile set from the LEGO Batman movie theme. All of these references are super sick, and some of them are way harder to find than others. But if there's one thing that's cooler than deep references like these, it's hidden minifigures. And the LEGO Disney Villain Icon set has loads of them. But first, take a look at this set. Isn't it sick? It's made up of some of the most popular Disney movies ever made. But not just that. They're made into VHS covers, VHS tapes, and books too. The secret minifigures are even cooler though. The first one is hidden in the apple from Snow White, where you can find the evil queen in her old woman disguise. The next one I'll show you is in the Sleeping Beauty VHS. And for this one, if you pull down at the top part of the graphic, Maleficent can be found lurking in the shadows. Next is the Aladdin tape at the bottom. And just like the Sleeping Beauty one, you just pull from the top of the graphic and find Jafar laying down. The last one is way harder to find though, and it's in the Beauty and the Beast book. At the bottom of the book, there's a little compartment that can be pulled out like a drawer, and this is where you can find Gaston. I honestly can't believe that LEGO hid this many minifigures in one set, but it makes it super fun for the builder, especially if they want to show it to someone. The hidden figures in the Capitol building set are a little different though. This set is part of the LEGO architecture theme, so the designers were super dedicated to getting every detail exactly right, including all of the statues in the middle of the set. Inside the real building, a bunch of statues surround the perimeter of the room, but since the LEGO version isn't scaled to minifigure size, the designers had to improvise. Instead of minifigs, they used blank nano figures, one of the smallest figures made by LEGO. These figures represent the statues perfectly, so although it wasn't necessary, it makes the set that much better. Another super discreet detail can be found in the Land Rover Classic Defender set, and of course, since it's a car, it's on the back license plate. This isn't your average LEGO license plate Easter egg though. Instead of referencing the design designer, these letters and numbers are actually important milestones in Land Rover's career. The first one, L316, is actually the model of Land Rover that LEGO used for the set, but the second one is a reference to a very specific Land Rover named Hue 166. This car is quite literally called the most famous Land Rover ever, but it's for good reason. It's actually the first Land Rover ever made. Its registration number was Hue 166, hence the name Hue. But it's crazy that just 3 letters have such a deep backstory. When LEGO uses numbers and letters like this, it makes everyone happy. But have you ever seen a set where the number of pieces is a reference to? It's most famously done in the NASA Apollo Saturn V set, where the amount of pieces matches the year humanity first stepped on the moon, 1969. This type of Easter egg is actually a little more common than you might think, because something similar happened with the Mona Lisa set. It has 1,503 pieces, but because of the number, you probably wouldn't bother to think of it as a year. However, 1503 is actually the year that Leonardo da Vinci started painting the Mona Lisa. It took him 16 years to do it, but it's a well-known fact that 1503 is when he started. Is LEGO still putting Easter eggs and references like these in their sets though? It's a good question, so let me show you the brand new LEGO Twilight Cullen House. To answer the question, yes, of course LEGO is still going super hard with the Easter eggs. In fact, just like the Friends set, the Cullen House also has a page on LEGO's website, breaking down a bunch of different references. The funniest ones by far, though, have to be the baseball references in the living room. If you've never seen the Twilight series, basically, the Cullens are a family of vampires, but there's a super famous scene in the movies where they actually play baseball and use their powers to their advantage. It's only famous because of how random it is for the movie. So to commemorate it, LEGO added a baseball hat on the coffee table and a tile with bats on it on the wall. The only way to make LEGO Easter eggs any better is if they're funny. And to be honest, it doesn't get much better than this. You can trade in your LEGO bricks for money. LEGO wasn't handing out cold hard cash or anything, but late last year, they launched a program called Brick Takeback. This program is exactly what it sounds like. Out of nowhere, LEGO wanted to buy back the bricks they've sold over the years, so they allowed fans to give back bricks, minifigures, and everything else as long as it was in good condition. LEGO paid people $6 per pound of pieces, and instead of money, they paid them with a gift card instead. This is a super crazy fact I didn't even know about, and I literally run a LEGO YouTube channel. So you already know the other facts in this video are going to be mind-boggling, so make sure you watch all the way until the end. On the topic of bricks though, did you know that LEGO sold so many of them that every single person in the world could own 75? An article from Gizmodo said that in total, LEGO sold around 400 billion bricks, but that article is from all the way back in 2008. So what's the number today? Well, according to BBC News, LEGO sells 75 billion bricks every year. So if you do the math, that would mean LEGO sold 600 billion bricks in their whole career. The population on Earth today is roughly 8 billion, so if you do the math again, that would leave 75 bricks per person. I have to say, when you really look at it, LEGO's hit some insane milestones. I mean, that's a number I can't even comprehend. Something that's even harder to comprehend, though, is the fact that LEGO didn't sell traditional instructions in sets they made back in the day. Before the bricks we all know and love, LEGO made these things called automatic binding bricks in 1949. They're very similar to the bricks that made LEGO famous, but they're still slightly different. Because it was so early in their career, every set with these binding bricks was very simple, and instead of instructions, the sets came with a booklet showcasing everything that was possible to build with the bricks that came in the box. There aren't a ton of pictures online, but it looks like LEGO was giving very light instructions on how to build the different structures. By 1954, though, they had it all figured out. I mean, even though it's super old, these pages are clearly showing you how to build a LEGO set. Up next is the fact that LEGO loves YouTube. They're always leaving comments on people's videos, which I'd go crazy if it happened to me. But would be even better is if you subscribe to my channel. LEGO and I both would really appreciate it. Anyways, back to the facts, something LEGO didn't have back in those days were brick separators, which would have been super useful. We've all seen a brick separator before. You know, that big orange thing that probably confused you when you were a kid? Well, did you know that it didn't always look like that? The first brick separator released back in 1990, and instead of orange, it was actually this super dull gray color, and it also looked a little different. They didn't go straight from this gray one to the one that we have today though. LEGO made a pit stop in 1996 with this green separator, and went back to the gray one in 2006. The one we have now was eventually made in 2011, and since then, LEGO hasn't made a new one. Another thing LEGO made along the way were sets with lights and sound effects in them. Now, obviously something like this would have been way too advanced for a set from the 1950s, which is why why LEGO didn't actually do this until 1985. They rolled out this forgotten feature with LEGO Light and Sound, which is an electronic system used in a lot of LEGO town and space themed sets. But when you hear about how they actually made this possible, it'll make sense why they stopped doing it a long time ago. The system came with a battery box and conducted power to the bricks by using metal that was built into the studs. This gave us some super cool stuff, like the light bricks that come in a bunch of different colors. But doing something like this at the size LEGO is now probably just wouldn't be sustainable. Listen, I'd never be mad at bricks that light up and have cool sound effects, but from a business perspective, I have to side with LEGO on this one. Funnily enough though, this isn't the only fun brick that LEGO stopped making. Up until a few years ago, LEGO was actually making chrome-plated pieces. They're most famously known for being used on the hilts of lightsabers in LEGO Star Wars, but LEGO used chrome pieces everywhere. From minifigure arms to crowns from LEGO Castle and even Hal's mask from Bionicle, they really did use them everywhere. So the question is, why did they stop? Well, given enough time, the chrome paint actually wears off pretty easily. And even if you aren't playing with them very much, they still scratch super easily, which is still pretty ugly. These days, instead of chrome, LEGO will usually use a color called metal light gray, which definitely isn't as shiny as the old chrome paint, but it also doesn't wear as easily, which I guess is a good trade-off. Although there is one piece LEGO still makes using chrome. It's this gold utensil ring piece, which is famously used in sets from the Lord of the Rings. So I guess chrome LEGO hasn't been completely phased out yet. This seems like a pretty big failure for them, but it's nowhere near as bad as the LEGO vacuum from 1991. It's called the Brick Vac, and no, it wasn't an actual vacuum. Instead, it was LEGO's attempt to make a tool that's solely meant to pick up LEGO bricks. It's great in theory, but in practice, not so much. If the bricks aren't super spread out, the vacuum just won't pick up all of them in one go. Since you have to use it by hand, it's only as powerful as the person who's using it. And since most of these people are probably kids, it's pretty easy to see why it failed so hard. I saw somewhere that apparently businesses use the Brick Vac as an example of what not to do, which is super funny, but I really hope for LEGO's sake that it isn't true. I mean, that's super embarrassing. But of course, LEGO is anything but bad at what they do. Like, they even made a working compass piece for the Pirates theme back in the day. People have made a bunch of different DIY LEGO compasses that actually work, but did you know LEGO made one themselves? And better yet, did you know that it can fit in a minifigure's hand? You can find it in the Skull's Eye Schooner set from 1993, and it's basically the size of a stud. It's meant to be used as part of the set, which is why it can fit in a minifigure's hand, but it's super sick to know that it actually works. I mean, LEGO really didn't have to do this at all. People were pretty excited when they found out about this, but one thing they absolutely hated was when LEGO made sets that were only released in China. I'm sure we all know, but China has their own New Year separate from ours in America, and it's a super big deal for them. Since LEGO is all-inclusive, they've been making sets for the Chinese New Year for a while now. But back in 2019, the sets LEGO made for that year's New Year were only available in China. The two sets were the traditional Chinese dinner and dragon dance sets, and fans were absolutely outraged. I'm not exactly sure if LEGO ever sold these sets in particular outside of China, but I know for sure that they never did anything like this ever again. The amount of backlash they got was genuinely insane, so there's no way they're ever trying that again. What's weird about this though is that fans didn't complain nearly as much about a set that was only sold in airports. To be more specific, a singular airport in Billund, Denmark. The set I'm talking about is, funnily enough, the Billund Airport set, and it never saw a shelf outside of the airport in Billund. This is by far one of the most exclusive sets LEGO's ever released. So exclusive, in fact, that it's part of the LEGO internal theme. If you've never heard of this theme, this is basically the home of the most exclusive sets LEGO's ever released. Most of them are sets that LEGO actually gave to employees over the years, but I somehow feel like the Billund Airport set was harder to get. It was sold in 2014 and has been retired for a while now, so this is a set that none of us are probably ever seeing. While I'm talking about super exclusive LEGO items though, I have to tell you about the minifigure business cards. If you've ever seen a minifigure with a LEGO logo and some random name on the front of it, you might have been confused about where it came from. Well, up until late 2023, LEGO actually made these minifigures for their high-ranking employees. It'd have their name on the front and contact information on the back. See why they were called business cards? These employees were literally handing out minifigures to network with people. I'm not sure why, but unless your last name is Christensen, you won't be getting a minifigure business card anymore. In other words, you have to be a part of the family to get one, which is honestly a shame. Cool minifigures are a big part of what makes LEGO so great, but another part is how inclusive LEGO is as a company. Back in 2016, LEGO released the first minifigure with a disability, and it was a super big deal. A bunch of different news outlets were talking about it, some even as big as NPR. He made his first appearance in the Fun in the Park set from 2016. This set is already super well known, but with this minifigure, it was bound to be huge. The disabled minifigure is the one sitting in a wheelchair petting a dog, having fun in the park just like the set intended. This was super big for LEGO. I mean, how often do you see them in the news? Usually when this happens, it's in the LEGO Advent Calendar. If you've never heard of this before, first of all, I apologize. But second of all, it's super sick. It's basically just a roadmap of every holiday-themed set LEGO's releasing in the coming days. Most of the time, the sets release all the way up until Christmas, but how long has LEGO been doing this for? Well, the first Advent Calendar actually came out back in 1998. A lot of the holiday sets from the late 90s had a Santa Claus minifigure, and were in the LEGO basic theme, but nothing was more exciting than seeing a set that you know for sure is coming out. As the years went on, LEGO expanded on this idea a lot, and made different calendars for a ton of different themes. One that I remember super well was the LEGO Star Wars Advent Calendar from 2012, which had this really cool Darth Maul minifigure. They made one for basically every theme that was super popular at the time. LEGO City, LEGO Pirates, LEGO Castle, you name it. If it was famous, they probably made a calendar for it. Naturally, LEGO Star Wars fell into that category, but did you know that Star Wars was actually the first licensed sets LEGO's ever released? They partnered up back in 1999, and it's genuinely crazy how big the theme got in such a short amount of time. It was basically the only thing I ever wanted growing up, and even today, it's still one of their biggest themes ever. They started out by making sets based on The Phantom Menace, since at the time, that was the most recent Star Wars movie. Very soon after that though, they started making sets based on the old movies, like the Snowspeeder, Luke's Land Speeder, and way more. As we all know, this expanded into things like the Ultimate Collector series and the best LEGO video games ever made. I have to say though, I'm pretty thankful LEGO had some experience with video games before the Star Wars games, because they could have easily messed it up like they did with LEGO Universe. This was LEGO's first ever MMO, which they released in 2010. Just 2 years later though, it was gone. It was supposed to be LEGO's version of World of Warcraft, since that was one of the biggest games at the time, but it just fell flat on its face. Oddly enough, these days it actually has a lot of supporters, like there's an entire subreddit dedicated to the game. And in 2021, LEGO added a whole page to their website about the game. They even released a never-before-seen soundtrack, which happened to be composed by Brian Tyler, who's now one of the most famous composers in Hollywood. The story with this game is honestly just downright confusing. Was the game good? Was it bad? I can't really figure it out, but clearly a lot of people like it. Another story LEGO fans seem to love is the goat piece. You might have seen this piece if you've ever watched a video about the rarest LEGO pieces, but that actually isn't true anymore. Kind of. The brown spotted goat was only put in one set from 2011. For the longest time, this was a huge meme in the LEGO community, but after 13 years, LEGO finally brought him back. In Series 25 of the LEGO minifigures, for some reason, a white goat was thrown into the mix. Now, technically it isn't the same thing, but there's more to the story here. People weren't just laughing that some random goat had only been in one set. It went a lot deeper than that. The mold that LEGO used to make that goat had only ever been used once. Most times, LEGO will use molds for a bunch of different pieces, but not that goat. For some reason, it's only shown up twice in LEGO's entire career. It's pretty funny, but it's still crazy at the same time. Have you ever been at the beach and seen a random LEGO piece washed up on shore? Well, as random as it may seem, you're actually not alone. Back in 1997, a cargo ship called the Tokyo Express was hit by a massive wave around England, and a few shipping containers fell off of it. Well, one of these containers actually had 5 million LEGO pieces inside of it, and funnily enough, they were all made for underwater themes, like Aqua Raiders and Pirates. It's extremely common to find LEGO pieces on the beach of the UK, so if you've ever been there and found one, now you know why. The next mystery, though, actually ties into this huge spill. Out of the 5 million pieces that were lost at sea, less than 10% have been found by humans. The thing is, though, there's one type of piece that was in the container that no one's been able to find, until now. The piece I'm talking about is a LEGO shark, and out of the 5 million, 51,800 of them were shark pieces. Just last year, a fisherman named Richard West found one in his fishing net, officially making him the first person to find a shark piece from the 1997 spill. Why did it take almost 30 years for someone to find a shark though? Wouldn't they have just washed up like every other piece? Well, not exactly. Because of the size and shape, the shark pieces sink underwater. So the only reason West was even able to find one was because he's a fisherman. Pretty crazy. The biggest mystery of all though is why you haven't subscribed to my channel yet. I upload LEGO videos just like this one every week, so go subscribe to my channel. Anyways, the next mystery I want to tell you about has to do with minifigures. If you've seen a minifigure with a random person's name on it, you might have been a little confused, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, why would a real minifigure from LEGO have something like this? Well, these are actually business cards for LEGO employees. I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually true. Instead of the traditional business cards that everyone else has, certain LEGO employees have a minifigure with their name on the front and contact information on the back. At least, they used to. As of late last year, LEGO is officially reserving them for the family. In other words, if your last name isn't Christensen, then you won't be getting a minifigure business card ever. I'm not entirely sure why LEGO decided to do this, but maybe it has something to do with how much they sell for on eBay. Yeesh. Unfortunately for LEGO, they can't control everything about minifigures, especially the giant ones that have been washing up on beaches since 2007. After all these years, only 6 of them have popped up, but they were quite literally all over the world. The first one was in Zandvoort, Netherlands in 2007. The second one was in 2008 at Brighton, UK. The third one was in 2011 at Siesta Key Beach in Florida. The fourth one was in 2012, and it was actually the second one to wash up in Brighton. The fifth one was in 2014 at Uegahama Beach in Japan, and the most recent one was in 2015 at Topanga Beach in California. Now, considering these minifigs are 8 feet tall and completely made of fiberglass, it's no wonder why there aren't too many of them. So what's the mystery here? Well, isn't it obvious? Who in the world is making these minifigures, and how are they making them wash up on beaches all over the world? Well, after all these years, we finally have an answer. The only hint we had was that the words Ego Leonard were printed somewhere on every single one. They also have weird messages on the front of them, but Ego Leonard are the only words that are on all of them. After all this time, we finally know that Ego Leonard was a guerrilla art project by Leon Kier, a Dutch artist known for his street art and optical illusions. But not every LEGO mystery is so innocent. For this one, I'm gonna have to take you to LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. But be warned, this mystery is pretty disturbing. In Mos Espa, you can find a silver protocol droid carrying a kyber brick into a house. Once you follow the droid inside, you get this super weird cutscene where he just stares at you with creepy music playing in the background. Then he runs into a room and vanishes. This is for sure a little weird, but this is where the creepy stuff comes in. This protocol droid's name is actually Nobot, and he has a seriously dark backstory. Apparently, he's been wandering around Mos Espa for decades, but no one actually knows why he's there. He even ventures off into the heart of the desert, but no matter what, he always ends up back in Mos Espa. According to Jira, one of the vendors we saw in The Phantom Menace, decades ago, Nobot was the only surviving witness to the murder of a pregnant woman, and he was covered in blaster fire and blood. Even worse than this was the fact that his communications module was known to play back the recording of this woman dying. Allegedly. There's no proof of it, but people are pretty convinced this droid committed the murder, and since he was left without a purpose, he just wanders around Mos Espa, aimlessly. Like I said, this mystery is anything but peachy, but to bring it all together, LEGO named the side mission where you find him Ghost Protocol. This is by far the creepiest mystery I found for this video, but there's something about creepy LEGO mysteries that's just so interesting. So let me tell you about one more. This one is about the legend of the Whispering Brick, and while it definitely isn't well known, if you look hard enough, you can find people talking about it. It's basically an urban legend in LEGO, but the story is that sometimes builders are able to hear a faint whisper coming from one of their bricks. It never says any definitive words, kind of like when Harry was hearing whispers in Harry Potter. But according to a few people, it was 100% coming from the direction their bricks were in. Now, if I'm being honest, there's no way this is real. I mean, it just seems like a creepypasta that trolls tried to get other people to believe. But regardless, it's still a weird mystery in LEGO, if you want to call it that. Moving on from the creepy stuff, there's actually a big mystery surrounding one of the most famous minifigures of all time, Mr. Gold. We all know who Mr. Gold is, but if you thought the mystery had to do with why LEGO decided to make him, or where they got all the gold from, you're completely wrong. It's actually that most of them are missing. LEGO made 5,000 of them in total, but with how many fake ones there are on the market, there was no way for anybody to keep track of where the real ones ended up. With a number as low as 5,000, and the fact that you could only get him in a minifigure Series 10 bag at random, you'd think that everyone that got one would post about it online, but that's not the case at all. Like I said before, because of how many fakes there are, it's impossible to know who actually has a real one. But to make it even more difficult, this minifigure came out all the way back in 2013. So tracking down all of those original posts would be insanely difficult. Obviously, this mystery is 100% unsolved, but it's actually a perfect segue into the next one, because it has to do with lost media. If you've never heard this term before, it's basically just something digital that no one is able to find. Knowing that, your next question might be, well, Minifigured, LEGO makes toys, so how would they have any sort of lost media? And to that, I would say that you'd be right, if it wasn't for the fact that LEGO's made a ton of TV shows over the years. Obviously, we have shows like Bionicle and Shima, but one that's been lost for a super long time is the LEGO Adventurers show from 1998. It aired on Cartoon Network on March 23rd, 1998, but it was only shown in Europe. On top of this, according to someone on Reddit who actually watched the show, each episode was only about 1 minute long, and they were shown in between other shows, so it wasn't really a full-blown cartoon. The only evidence we have that it even exists is a small advertisement on a page from the LEGO Club magazine for March and April of 1998, and a super low-quality 30-second commercial advertising the show. So there's no evidence of the actual show, just ads for it. TV shows aren't the only thing that's been lost over the years, though. There's also tons of mobile games that have been completely wiped from the App Store. About a year ago, someone on TikTok uploaded a few videos of them recording their old phone, and they had a ton of these extinct apps. I guess they just never updated their phone, because that's literally the only way they could still have these apps on there. Now, technically speaking, none of them are actually lost media, but it's still really cool to see LEGO games that aren't available anymore, just sitting on someone's phone. Let's move on from lost media though, so I can tell you about the time that LEGO helped solve a mystery in real life. I have to give another warning here though. This one is much darker than the Nobot mystery. Back in 1991, Lucille Johnson was found murdered in her house in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm not exactly sure why, but the police back then were never able to find out who killed her, so her case went cold for years and was eventually closed. One of the only details I'm comfortable saying is that LEGO pieces were found at the door to the house, the living room, and in the driveway, and it would turn out that these pieces are what allowed the piece to find the person responsible years later. In 2013, they finally had the technology they needed to inspect the pieces properly, and this is how they cracked the case wide open. The police tested some DNA from the crime scene, and it matched to a man named John Sansing, who was actually already in prison for murder in Arizona. Further analysis revealed that the fingerprints on the LEGO bricks matched his son, who was 5 years old at the time. With this, the police were easily able to link Sansing to the murder, and they were pretty sure he used his son to get inside the house in the first place. Like I said, this story is very dark, but isn't it crazy that the only reason it got solved was because of fingerprints on a LEGO brick? This is by far the craziest story I found for this video. But let's get back to mysteries that stay within LEGO. The next one I want to talk about is the mystery of the lighthouse rowboat, and it may not seem like much, but this one has been stumping fans for ages. Back in 2022, LEGO released this motorized lighthouse set, and it's actually a really sick set, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I and everyone else are wondering is why the back of the rowboat has the word Lita on it. It has absolutely no significance in the set, and the weird part is that this set is in LEGO Ideas, but the designer never gave any information on the name. In fact, the only significance it has is in Greek mythology. Lita was an Aetolian princess who later became a Spartan queen, but this is a lighthouse set, so there are no demigods or any other mythological creatures to be found. If there's one thing about LEGO fans, it's that they love to know every little detail, but unfortunately, this is one they're just gonna have to forget about. Moving on from that though, the last mystery I want to tell you about honestly shouldn't even be considered a mystery anymore. The LEGO Vault. A long time ago, there were rumors floating around that LEGO had a secret vault where they have one of every LEGO product ever made stored inside, released and unreleased. Fast forward years later, and there are tons of videos on YouTube of people literally showing the inside of the vault. It used to be in a different spot, but now it's part of the LEGO Inside Tour. Someone on Reddit showed what the inside of the new one looked like, noting how it's not in a bunker anymore. But if this isn't enough to convince you that the vault is real, then this next thing definitely will be. For 2024's Inside Tour, the set LEGO gave to attendees was a set of the vault itself, called Memory Lane. I mean, come on, at this point, there's literally no arguing it. the LEGO Vault mystery has officially been solved, and honestly, it has been for a super long time. We all know the typical minifigure faceplate, 2 dots for the eyes and a smiley face. But what if I told you that at one point, LEGO was making a bunch of minifigures with noses? I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually true. And no, I'm not just talking about Lord Voldemort. The first time we saw this was back in 1996, when LEGO released this Timmy minifigure. After that, it was in 1997 with the Indian sub-theme, which is part of the Western theme. It wasn't just one minifigure though. Every single minifigure depicting a Native American has a nose on their faceplate, so LEGO's actually done this a lot more than people think. My question for LEGO though is, since not every minifigure has a nose, why does every skeleton faceplate have one? Weird. On the topic of minifigures, something that a lot of people misremember about them is when the first one actually came out. A lot of people think LEGO released the first one as early as the 1950s, but that couldn't be further from the truth, although it does make sense. An earlier version of the minifigure we have today looks like this, and I have to say, it does look super old, but it's not that old. The first official LEGO figures were the building figures in 1974, but just 1 year later, LEGO released those minifigs with no arms and legs. We're already up to the year 1975, so obviously LEGO didn't release the first minifigure in the 1950s. But just for bricks and giggles, I'll let you know that the first official minifigure was the police officer in 1978. The thing about LEGO Mandela effects is that it's almost always about something super old, like what country LEGO's originally from. People think they're from a bunch of different places, like Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, but they're actually from Denmark, Billund to be exact, and it's not like it isn't advertised. It takes hardly any research to figure this out. I mean, you could literally do it with one Google search. But apparently, this is something that people just can't agree on. In my opinion though, the craziest Mandela effect is that I swore my channel had 100,000 subscribers. I don't really know what happened, but just subscribe to my channel so I can get back there. I feel like I'm in the wrong universe or something. Anyways, one of the biggest Mandela effects ever has actually been proven wrong again by LEGO. Pretty soon, we'll be getting an official collab with Pokemon, and what's the biggest Mandela effect in Pokemon? Pikachu's tail. We've all seen it before. Or have we? Some people swear Pikachu always had a black tip on his tail, and others swear the opposite. But if we go to LEGO's website, there's actually something there that tells us everything we need to know. LEGO made a separate page for the announcement, which they usually do for collabs that are this big. But if you look at the thumbnail for the trailer, you can very clearly see Pikachu's tail with no black tip. I don't know about you, but that's enough evidence for me. I gotta trust LEGO on this one. However, I can't trust them on everything. This next Mandela effect has to do with Star Wars, and LEGO completely confused me with this one. The Mandela effect is that C-3PO was never fully gold, but that he actually has a silver leg. There's a lot of explaining that goes into this one, so just bear with me. Because of how old the original Star Wars movies are, in most scenes, it's pretty hard to tell that his leg is actually silver. The next Star Wars movies weren't made until the early 2000s, and even then, we didn't see a completed C-3PO until the Revenge of the Sith. However, he did actually have a silver leg in that movie. This is where it gets weird though. When Star Wars came back for the second time in 2015, something happened to C-3PO off screen, and he ended up getting his arm replaced with a red one, but no silver leg. And better yet, it was gold. The timeline here is confusing enough, but combine this with the fact that LEGO's released fully gold and silver-legged C-3PO minifigures just makes it even worse. Maybe I'm missing something here, but clearly people are not on the same page about this guy's design. Of course, LEGO Star Wars isn't all that bad. It introduced one of the coolest minifigure attachments since minifigures were a thing: small legs. However, one person online remembers it completely differently. Apparently, they remembered seeing a minifigure with short legs way before they were released with LEGO Star Wars. This was a pretty big thing too. The legs were used on Master Yoda, a notably short character in the movies, so it was cool that LEGO made new legs specifically for him. But for some reason, this person swears the legs were released in the 90s, and not 2002 with the first Yoda minifigure. Someone even asked if they were remembering a page from a LEGO Ideas catalog, but the person said they never owned one of those in their entire life. I'm pretty sure this person was alone on this claim, but the name of the LEGO Technic theme is something that's been confusing people for years. It's nothing crazy, like that it had an entirely different name or something. It's just that people swear it was called Technics and not Technic. One person even did a deep dive online and was able to find a good amount of evidence of other people calling it Technics. Not only did they find it in 2 different books, but they also found it in a YouTube title and as a category on a customs website. The thing is though, most of these sources weren't in English, so it's probably just a translation error. But regardless, the evidence is still there. Obviously, we know that it's called LEGO Technic, but you'd be surprised how many people think the opposite. This next Mandela effect is another one that got confirmed through LEGO, but it's way older than Pikachu's tail. Instead, it's about Mickey Mouse. The first animation with Mickey Mouse is called Steamboat Willie, and it's quite literally one of the most famous short films ever made. The thing is though, people have been arguing about whether or not Mickey wore suspenders for years. Well, LEGO actually made a set based on Steamboat Willie, and even before then, they made a few different Mickey Mouse minifigs based on the animation. And I don't know about you, but I definitely don't see suspenders on any of them. Even on the regular Mickey Mouse minifigures, there isn't a single suspender in sight. The crazy thing is though, is that this isn't the only Mandela effect about Mickey Mouse. People also swear he never had a tail, even though he's literally a mouse. Unfortunately, just like the C-3PO Mandela effect, LEGO wasn't much help with this one. Obviously, the minifigures don't have a tail attached to them, but they don't even have anything printed on the back to show that it actually exists. As much as I love LEGO, they're pretty hit or miss with their minifigure accuracy, but when it comes to names and logos, they hit the nail right on the head. A super big Mandela effect is the spelling of Looney Tunes. Now, I don't know how you remember it being spelled, but honestly, I've seen both versions so many times now that I can't even remember which one I think it is. But a ton of people swear that Tunes was spelled with 2 O's instead of a U. Newsflash, that's not true. Looney Tunes has always been spelled with a U. And of course, LEGO followed suit and spelled it correctly with everything they've ever made for Looney Tunes. Another classic cartoon that gets the same treatment is the Flintstones. People are so passionate about this one. I swear I've seen them put it on the entire universe itself, but they say that the Flintstones is only spelled with 1 T. So instead of the Flintstones, it's the Flintstones. Now, if I'm being honest, this can easily be attributed to the fact that most people just say the name too fast, leave out the T in Flint, and just assume that's what the name actually is. But once again, everything LEGO's ever made for the Flintstones is spelled with 2 T's, not 1. But what about logos though? So many different logos have had their own Mandela effects, like the Coca-Cola logo, which LEGO also has the proof of and has since 2002, but that's not the one I want to talk about. I want to talk about the Ford logo, one of the most well-known car logos in America. Take a look at the official logo. You probably think there's nothing wrong with it, right? Well, I lied. This actually isn't the real Ford logo. Here it is side by side with the real one. The detail is small and easy to miss, but the real one actually has a little curly Q on the F. The internet's been fighting over this one for a super long time, but LEGO's been collabing with Ford since before the internet even existed. The first thing they made together released all the way back in 1961, but unfortunately from what I can find, none of the sets they made that long ago had the Ford logo anywhere. However, the sets they released in 2016 are a different story. LEGO put out a few sets in the Speed Champions theme, and you can see the Ford logo bright as day on every box that has a Ford car in it. You can fight me all you want in the comments, but when it comes to spelling and logos, LEGO's got it down packed. As we've already seen, they're a little mid when it comes to characters, but for Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, they got super lucky. The Mandela effect for this guy is that people think he had a huge Adam's apple in the cartoon. Now, I didn't watch the cartoon very much, so I can't really speak on this. But what do I mean when I say LEGO got lucky? Well, minifigures don't exactly have necks. So not only is there no room for an Adam's apple, but I've never even seen a real minifigure made by LEGO with something printed on that tiny little neck. So when LEGO made 2 different versions of Shaggy in 2015, they didn't even have to worry about getting it wrong at all, unlike what happened with Mickey Mouse. Honestly, this is what happens with a lot of Mandela effects. People are just plain wrong, but this next one genuinely boggles my mind. Apparently, some people think that in LEGO Star Wars, Darth Vader had a fully red lightsaber, hilt and all. I played with LEGO Star Wars minifigs all the time when I was a kid, and I can confidently say that his lightsaber has never been fully red. Granted, there have been a lot of different versions of Darth Vader, so maybe one of them had a mass factory error and a bunch of people got red lightsabers, but I highly doubt it. Another one that people seem to pull out of nowhere was LEGO's first theme. For some reason, people seem to think that the first official theme LEGO ever made was the space theme, which is totally wrong. It was definitely a super popular theme, and it's probably how a bunch of kids back in the day found out about LEGO in the first place, but they had an established theme way before that. Their first official one was the town theme, which got its first set all the way back in 1955, before LEGO was even using bricks. Maybe I've been a little too mean with these last 2 Mandela effects, but I really just can't see how people remember it like this. Especially that Darth Vader one. I mean, that was just crazy. Anyways, the last Mandela effect I want to talk about actually makes a ton of sense. A lot of people think that LEGO's never made anything that depicted real weapons, but that actually isn't true. I'm sure we all remember the scandal with the Osprey V-22 set, and how LEGO didn't want to release it because it was still actively being used in militaries across the world. Because of how recent recent this was, a lot of people remember LEGO's claim about how they don't want to release anything in that category. So I guess people heard that and thought, that must mean they've never made weapons that are used in real life. But back in the day, LEGO was making gun pieces like nobody's business in the Western theme. That theme is full of cowboys, and what's a cowboy's go-to weapon? A gun. So, of course, LEGO couldn't just leave those out. I mean, they're a staple of every cowboy. This time, though, it's just another classic case of LEGO proving them wrong. The sad Wolverine meme from the X-Men cartoon from 1997. Basically, Wolverine is looking at a picture of a girl named Jean Grey and her new boyfriend. He stares at the picture and gets all in his feelings since he can't get the girl, and probably starts singing Juice WRLD in his head or something. The frame of him staring at the picture went stupid viral, and even got recreated in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie in 2024. But did you know that LEGO also recreated it in the X-Men Mansion set? If you go to the bedroom on the second floor, there's actually a tile piece of the same picture that Wolverine was looking at in the cartoon. With this, you can put the Wolverine minifig on the bed and fully recreate the meme. But if you thought this was cool, how about this fan-made set that lets you make the Homer Simpson Bush meme in real life? This meme is a lot more popular as a GIF. Yes, that's how you pronounce it. So if this set was just Homer standing still in front of a bush, it definitely wouldn't be as cool. Like this one from LEGO Ideas. There's nothing truly wrong with it, but the other one is so much better. Isn't it way cooler that you can actually move Homer in and out of the bush? This set was made by JK Extras using all real LEGO pieces. And if you want the set for yourself, you can either buy the instructions on Rebrickable or buy the set outright on Build-A-MOC. Huge memes like this are super sick in LEGO, but that isn't all there are. They also add some LEGO-specific memes for the true LEGO fans. I'm sure a lot of you guys watched the Ninjago TV show on Cartoon Network. So I'm sure you'll also remember when Zane went undercover and wore a pink outfit as a disguise. People thought this was the funniest thing ever and begged LEGO to make a pink Zane minifigure in real life. After years of waiting, we finally got one in the Gamers Market set. It was exactly what the people had been asking for, but if you weren't a huge Ninjago fan, you probably would have been really confused. But if you love LEGO like me, go subscribe to my channel. I post LEGO videos literally every week, so just go subscribe. Anyways, another set with a niche LEGO meme like Pink Zane is the Medieval Town Square set, and it's based on the goat piece. For over 10 years, LEGO never used this mold for any other piece, and they never even put the goat in another set until the Minifigure Series 25 pack. The Medieval Town Square set was released after this minifigure pack, so it makes sense why the guy who was selling their goat had to put him on sale. This was a super clever way for LEGO to reference the fact that the goat was going to be losing value after all these years since the mold was finally being used again. Stuff like this doesn't happen often in LEGO. Usually, it's individual pieces that don't get used more than once. This exact thing happened with a certain minifigure, but the thing is, the minifig was already a super popular meme. In 2016, LEGO released the Minifigure Series 15 pack, and out of all of these minifigures, can you guess which one is the meme? Well, if you guessed the shark, you'd be absolutely right. This guy is a direct reference to the shark suit guy from Katy Perry's halftime show in 2016. One of the backup dancers was wearing a shark suit and went insanely viral after putting their whole tail fin into the dance. The meme isn't too big anymore, which makes sense since it was 9 years ago. But were any of you on the internet for this meme? It was absolutely huge in the early days of memes. So if you're a little young watching this video, sorry, this one just isn't for you. The picture comes from The Lord of the Rings, when Boromir said, "One does not simply walk into Mordor." People just started using this frame and saying how one does not simply do a bunch of different things. But how could this meme ever be in LEGO? Well, in the Rivendell set from 2024, LEGO included a bunch of minifigs, one of them being Boromir. And since LEGO is all about Easter eggs and references, they gave this minifigure a faceplate that's pretty accurate to the meme itself. Now, obviously, you can't fully recreate the meme, just because of how minifigured hands actually work, but you can get pretty close because of the faceplate. A meme you guys will all know, though, is Chicken Jockey. This one needs no explanation. We all know it's from the Minecraft movie, and we've all seen the crazy videos of people in the movie theater when they say it on screen. But this meme literally just happened, so how is it already in LEGO? Well, Jack Black didn't just say Chicken Jockey to be funny. It's an actual thing in Minecraft. It happens when a baby zombie rides a chicken, and I guess this happened enough in-game that people wanted to give it a name, and Chicken Jockey is just what they landed on. But where can you find it in LEGO? Well, they actually released sets for the live-action Minecraft movie, and one of them is this fighting ring, the exact scene where we get the Chicken Jockey line in the movie. When you look at the set, only one thing should stand out now. Yup, that's definitely a Chicken Jockey. Another movie that had a huge meme was Avengers Endgame. This movie came out in 2019, so the meme is a little old now, But do you remember when Thor was sitting at home doing nothing all day? He was in a pretty sad state, but the scene where his friend is getting cyberbullied on Fortnite not only blew up online, but LEGO even referenced it in one of their sets. The player's name was Noobmaster69, and if you look at the TV in the Bro Thor's new Asgard set, you can see the word noob.m on the left. I guess this one is more of an Easter egg, but there's no doubt that this is a direct reference to that scene from the movie. If you think that's it for LEGO Marvel memes though, guess again, because for this one, I'm taking you straight to the Daily Bugle. This set is mostly known for its Easter eggs and minifigures, but there's actually a meme hiding in plain sight. In one of the many rooms in this set, there's a green room with a desk and a tile piece with Spider-Man's headshot in the back. It may not look like much when it's empty, but when you put a Spider-Man minifigure behind the desk and get the right angle, there's no mistaking. This is one of the biggest memes with Spider-Man ever, but it is a little old, so I know all the young adults were super happy to see this in the set. Technically speaking, this actually isn't the only Spider-Man meme in LEGO. You can also recreate the famous pointing meme if you buy the Spider-Man Final Battle set. This set is based on the movie No Way Home, and Marvel themselves actually recreated the pointing meme in the movie. So if you buy this set, you can recreate the recreation, which kind of feels like a giant Russian doll of Spider-Man pointing memes. But if you want to remake the one from the movie in LEGO, you definitely can. A lot of these memes have been pretty easy to spot so far, but this next one feels more like an Easter egg than anything else. There's actually a reference to the keyboard cat hiding somewhere in the Monkey Kids Cloud Airship set. And even if you built the set, odds are you'd have no idea that this reference is even there. At the top of the airship, you can find this tile piece attached to the wall. See the resemblance? Monkey Kid's arms are super extended, just like the cat's when it was playing the keyboard. The best way to spot memes like this is if you know a lot about the IP for the set you're building. Like, I'm sure all of the Office superfans probably spotted these 3 memes I'm about to tell you about instantly. The first one is this poop piece hiding under Michael's desk. In Season 2, Episode 14, Michael came into the office and found a giant poop waiting for him. So, of course, LEGO couldn't resist including that. Then there were the times Jim put Dwight's stapler in Jell-O. So, of course, LEGO had to make a brand new piece just for that. But the best one is LEGO's version of Kevin's chili spilling all over the floor. This is one of the most famous cold opens in the entire show, so there's no way LEGO could have left it out. Another TV show that got this treatment is Seinfeld. Now, there are a million things LEGO could have done for this one, but they decided to go with the Festivus poll. Festivus is basically a made-up anti-Christmas holiday that gets celebrated on December 23rd instead of December 25th. But the characters needed something to represent the holiday, like how there's a Christmas tree for Christmas. So they made this thing called a Festivus poll, and sure enough, LEGO included it in the official Seinfeld set. Clearly, LEGO is really good at putting memes in sets, but sometimes they actually do them by accident. Something like this happened in the LEGO Harry Potter Gringotts Bank set, and it's literally hiding in plain sight. The stickers they used for the bank's name were really weird, so we ended up with the letters TS being separated from the rest of the name. Obviously, this wasn't their intention at all. I mean, what business does LEGO have putting peak brain rot into one of their sets? The only time LEGO even got close to that was when they made the Bigfoot minifigure for the Series 14 pack. The theme of this pack was monsters, so every minifig in here is a well-known monster that doesn't actually exist. At least, that's what most people think. You see, the thing is, there's an entire community of people who all believe in Bigfoot or some form of Sasquatch, but nobody's ever been able to capture it on camera. Notice anything about the minifigure now? He's literally holding a camera. This was a clear joke from LEGO about the fact that there's no real evidence that this monster exists, and yet so many people believe that it actually does. This honestly could have landed LEGO in some hot water. I mean, it's not often that they do anything even remotely controversial, but a post they made on Facebook and Twitter back in 2019 definitely didn't age well. It all starts with Elon Musk revealing the Cybertruck. Yes, he revealed it that long ago. Of course, Elon was hyping it up to no end, but the rest of the world didn't really agree. Everybody just thought it was ugly, including LEGO. And to show that, they made this post. They literally remade the Cybertruck out of like 5 pieces and called it the evolution of the truck, which is probably something Elon said, if we're being honest. You know, now that I'm seeing this, it's no wonder LEGO rejected the Cybertruck on LEGO Ideas. I mean, they literally memed it the day it got announced. Anyways, getting back to some actual memes, there's a super big one in the Jurassic Park movie called Shirtless Malcolm. For some reason, this guy was posted up like the flippin' sexy emote from Fortnite, and people thought it was super funny. The actor even recreated it years later, but you know who else did? Lego. And they did it in the T-Rex Rampage set. Malcolm's minifigure has the exact same outfit on, and he even has his shirt open and sweat all over his body, which are obvious references to the meme. Now, even though you can't recreate the position he was sitting in, it's still pretty obvious why Lego did this. It's gotten to the point, though, where even fans have started making memes out of Lego, like what JK Extras did for the Homer Simpson meme. Just like theirs, someone submitted a Lego version of the "This is fine" meme to Lego Ideas. Now, unfortunately, it did get rejected, but this proves that people really do love seeing memes in Lego. Another one that got submitted was this "Peace was never an option" set, which is probably a lot less popular than the "This is fine" meme, since it only has about 160 supporters. Lego collabed with one of the biggest car TV shows in the world, Top Gear. Top Gear is a British show that started all the way back in 2002 and is actually still going to this day. They're up to their 33rd season, which, if anything, proves how famous and loved this show truly is. Of course, Lego made a car in honor of the show, but it wasn't just any car. Not only did it have Top Gear branding all over it, but it's actually a remote control car. All you have to do is download the Control Plus app and you can magically control this Lego set from your phone. I have to say, this is a pretty insane Lego collab, but there are some other ones in this video that you won't believe, so make sure you watch until the end. Up next is a set from the LEGO Studios theme, which actually hasn't been around since 2002. The set I want to show you from this theme is the Steven Spielberg set, and it's way cooler than you might think. First of all, there's literally a Steven Spielberg minifigure in this set, but that's not even the best part. LEGO knew they had to go all out for this one, so they not only added a working camera, but there's also an editing software for this set, which for 2002 is genuinely insane. Back in the day, this would have been pretty easy to get your hands on, so let me show you an exclusive collab you definitely don't own. This is the LEGO BR Toy Store's minifigure, and if you've never heard of this toy store before, it's probably because it only exists in Denmark. They were founded all the way back in 1963, and the minifigure with their logo on it was released in 2013. Notice anything? Well, this minifigure was actually only available in BR toy stores during August of that year to celebrate their 50th anniversary. The founders didn't know each other or anything, but I guess LEGO has a special place in their heart for them, since they're both from Denmark. But did you know that LEGO also has a special place in their heart for YouTube? But for some reason, they said YouTube tries to stop you from subscribing to LEGO channels. So go check if you can subscribe to my channel really quick. Anyways, getting back to the video, even though BR Toy Stores is from Denmark, you don't have to be from the same country as LEGO to get a collab with them. Before they shut down, Toys R Us had been collabing with LEGO since 2012, and they released 52 different items together. The first thing they ever released together was this vintage minifigure collection, but they also released a bunch of tiny sets too, like this mini replica of a Toys R Us store. LEGO didn't just release all this willy-nilly though. Most of these small sets were released as a part of Bricktober, which was an event LEGO only did with Toys R Us. Basically, from the first day of October to the first day of November, LEGO would release sets in Toys R Us that could only be bought during that time frame. As if this wasn't exclusive enough, there's also an Easter egg for Bricktober that you probably don't even know about. In 2009, when you bought a set, you'd get a Duplo brick with part of a picture on it, and the only way you'd be able to complete the picture was if you bought one set per week. Once you did that, you would end up with this super exclusive build, which tons of people probably don't even know exist. They did this every year for a long time, and a lot of the builds are super cool. But it's by far one of the most underground LEGO collabs ever. So let me tell you about the time LEGO collabed with Uniqlo. Back in 2016, LEGO dropped a bunch of shirts in Uniqlo stores, some in men's sizes and some in kids' sizes. But just like the collab with Toys R Us, there's an Easter egg that LEGO didn't advertise at all. If you bought a t-shirt, you'd get an exclusive Uniqlo poly bag, which had one of 4 builds in it: a koala, a parrot, a robot, or a space shuttle. None of them had more than 65 pieces, but because of how exclusive they are, they're undeniably cool. If you thought that was exclusive though, let me tell you about the time LEGO collabed with an entire country. I'm talking about the Minitalia theme. This was a project that LEGO worked on with Italy, and it was actually only produced and sold in that country. The theme ran from 1970 to 1976, but funnily enough, it only happened because Italy actually had a problem with LEGO. For some reason, they didn't want LEGO in their country at all, and instead of beefing, LEGO decided to make this this theme instead. All of the sets in this theme were very educational and were mostly only used in schools. But it's only because of Minitalia that LEGO is able to sell sets in Italy at all, which is crazy. Now, obviously, LEGO's collabed with people all over the world, but one of the craziest ones by far is their collab with Formula 1. Now, officially, LEGO didn't collab with them until 2025, but they've been making sets based on their cars for a long time. The first one was made all the way back in 1977 and was part of the LEGO Town theme. But these days, we have stuff like the Ultimate Formula 1 Collector's Pack, which technically isn't releasing until March, but it's still sick nonetheless. It's quite literally a giant pack of 10 different F1 cars with 10 drivers as minifigures. I mean, it's literally an F1 fan's dream. LEGO collabs with giant brands like this all the time, like the Adidas collab from a few years ago. But did you know that if you bought the right set from that collab, you'd get this super sick minifigure? I have to say, this is one of the funniest minifigures I've ever seen, but not many people know that it only came with the Mini Original Superstar set. Only 3 sets were released in this collab, but for some reason, this was the only one that had it. What you might not know though is that LEGO collabed with Adidas long before this. Back in the early 2000s, LEGO was making a lot of sets based on sports, like the NHL sets, which I talked about in my last video about collabs. But they also made a ton of sets for soccer, and this gave birth to the Adidas Team Transport set in 2002, which actually came with the LEGO soccer ball, so that's pretty cool. This isn't all LEGO did though. They also made the Adidas goalie in 2007, which you might recognize if you've looked into rare minifigures at all. While LEGO was on their sports craze, they made a sub-theme for soccer, which is actually an entire collab in and of itself. I'm talking about the LEGO Coca-Cola soccer sets, and what's crazy here is that there are technically 30 sets in this sub-theme. The thing is, not all of them have the Coca-Cola logo on them, so there's no way to know it's a collab with them unless you have the original bag. However, that's not the case with the soccer player minifigures. All of them have the Coca-Cola logo right across their chests, which looks super sick. Now, these did come out all the way back in 2002, so they're all pretty rare. So let me show you a collab you can actually still get your hands on today. This is the Starry Night set, and it's actually a collab with the Museum of Modern Art, or MoMA for short. Funnily enough though, this set started out as a fan submission on LEGO Ideas back in 2020. It got approved by LEGO in February of 2021, and I guess somewhere along the line, LEGO brought MoMA onto the project. I have to say, this must be a crazy feeling for the fan who made this set. Not only did it get accepted by LEGO, but they got a collab with one of the most well-known museums in the world. Oh, I almost forgot. There was one more thing I wanted to show you from LEGO Sports. Not only did they collab with Adidas, the NHL, and Coca-Cola, but they even got sets with the NBA too. Just like the Coca-Cola sub-theme, LEGO made a ton of sets with the NBA, 29 to be exact. The Ultimate Basketball Arena set was one of the first ones they ever made for this theme, but it was honestly one of the coolest. They kept making sets like this until the theme retired in 2004, but they also dropped some minifigure packs of famous players from back then. It's definitely a super underrated theme, even on the resale market. Like, the most valuable set in the theme doesn't even break $800. But if we're gonna talk about expensive LEGO, then let me tell you about the time LEGO collabed with the designer brand Gucci. Back in 2018, LEGO designer Andy Hung took it upon himself to remake one of the most iconic handbags out of bricks. Now, because Gucci is so high-end, the bag never ended up getting sold by LEGO, and instead was on display at the Used Museum in Shanghai, China. Which does make a lot of sense, since designer brands aren't supposed to be very accessible. But LEGO's collab with Target was super easy to get. In my first video on random collabs, I talked about the gift cards from 2010 and 2011, but there are actually a few other items LEGO dropped with Target. Just like their collab with Toys R Us, LEGO released a few different minifigure collections, which are all super cool. The first one was in 2014, and came with Lloyd, Lavertus, Superboy, and a Swamp Police Officer minifigure. And all of them are actually exclusive to this collection from Target. The second minifigure collection dropped the next year, and came with Kai, Lightning Lad, Sir Fangar, and a Lego City Diver. These guys are also exclusive to their collection from Target, which is why you've probably never seen them before. And funnily enough, the exclusive minifigures don't stop there. These 3 were only available at an event called Kids Fest in 2018, and unlike Comic-Con or the New York Toy Fair, Kids Fest has a bunch of different events all over the country. But once 2018 was over, you couldn't get these minifigures ever again. The technical name for them is 3 Kids Fest minifigures, which I have to say is a little lazy on LEGO's part. Like, come on, we see that it's 3 minifigures, bro. It's okay though, because their collab with the MLB definitely makes up for it. Back in 2015, LEGO dropped this San Francisco Giants baseball player set, but the thing is, you only had one day to get it. It was only available at AT&T Park in San Francisco on September 12th, 2015. So if you're a Giants fan, sorry, but you missed your chance to get this a long time ago. But unfortunately, I have to crush your dreams even more, because in 2016, they dropped this Lucille set on July 30th, and it was also only available at AT&T Park. I have to say, out of every sport LEGO's made sets for, the cool baseball ones have been the hardest to get, because LEGO did this exact same thing with sets for the Boston Red Sox too. The Red Sox player set dropped back in 2016, and if you weren't at Fenway Park on August 31st, congrats, you missed your only chance to pick up this set. Don't worry though, it doesn't end there. In 2019, LEGO released a Wally set, which if you didn't know is the mascot of the Boston Red Sox. I hate to say it, but this guy was only available at Fenway Park on June 26th of 2019, so he's also long gone. This is the only problem with these old LEGO collabs. They're super hard to even know about, let alone get your hands on. So let me show you a collab that actually released just last year and is still available right now. This is the Dungeons & Dragons set, and if you don't keep up with new LEGO sets, then you might have missed when this dropped. Dungeons & Dragons is one of the oldest and most popular role-playing games ever made, and apparently the LEGO set for it is super accurate to the game. I've never actually played Dungeons & Dragons, so I'm not sure how true this is, but from what I've seen online, it's super good, and while it may be sick, it doesn't compare to the time LEGO collabed with nature. This is the Plants from Plants polybag, and just like the name says, these plant pieces are made from plants. Now, obviously, this isn't a real collab. I just wanted to troll a little bit. But funnily enough, these pieces are actually a little exclusive. They were only available from August 1st to the 14th in 2018. They were completely free in LEGO stores, and you could also get them with qualifying purchases online, too. That's enough trolling, though. Let's get to the next collab. This is the Lufthansa plane set, and I can't actually find where this set was sold. According to Brickset, there's a chance it was available on Lufthansa flights, but I'm not sure how true that is. Regardless, the set is still sick. It's a 67-piece plane with the Lufthansa logo on it and a pilot minifigure. It's still weird that it wasn't available in stores though. So instead, let's talk about when LEGO collabed with yet another toy store. It's pretty crazy how many toy stores LEGO's collabed with over the years. There's Toys R Us, BR toy stores, Target, but another one is Hamley's toy store. This might be the only toy company in history that's better than LEGO, and believe me, I wouldn't say that about just any toy store. Hamley's was founded all the way back in 1760, and since then, they've built up their flagship store in London to 7 stories and sell 50,000 different toys. And in 2018, this Royal Guard minifigure was one of them. Hamley's has a bunch of different stores all over the world. They have 11 in the UK alone, and 90 other stores outside of the UK. But this minifigure could only be picked up at the store in London, the best one. It's pretty crazy how many collabs LEGO's done over the years. But in America, you can find LEGO vending machines and even actual LEGO stores too. The first airport in America to get a LEGO store was Salt Lake City Airport in Utah, but there's also stores in Miami, Dallas, and LaGuardia Airport in New York. The coolest one by far though is the store in Billund Airport, and back in 2018, if you went to this store, you could have gotten your hands on the Billund Airport set, which you could only buy at that LEGO store. This is just one crazy fact about LEGO, but I have way more for you, so make sure you watch until the end of the video. Up next is the fact that LEGO was actually supposed to go broke a while ago, but got saved by a certain theme in 2001. That theme is LEGO Bionicle, and I know it's hard to believe, but yes, LEGO actually was going broke during that time. In 1998 and 2000, LEGO didn't make any profit at all, and at the end of the day, they are a business, so this was very bad news for them at the time. This made LEGO realize that bricks on their own just aren't cutting it anymore. So Kjeld Kirk Christiansen and Christian Faber, the art director at the time, put their heads together and came up with Bionicle. It was unlike anything LEGO had ever made before, but since they were losing money, it was do or die. As we know today, it worked out. Bionicle is one of the coolest themes LEGO's ever released, and it was so successful that it even got its own show on Cartoon Network. The funny thing about LEGO though is that they didn't always make plastic toys. Before the bricks we all know and love, LEGO actually made wooden toys instead. It started back in 1932, when the founder of LEGO, Ole Kirk Christiansen, started making and selling wooden toys by hand. LEGO has an entire overview of every wooden toy from back then, and the earliest one we know of is a yo-yo, which was made in 1930. Ole Kirk made a ton of wooden toys before eventually switching to plastic bricks though. There's a doll carriage from 1934, a tow truck from 1948, and there's even a grasshopper from 1957. Everything changed in 1959 though, because this is when Ole Kirk decided to put down the chisel and make LEGO what it is today. That year, the wooden toys were officially pulled from the LEGO product line and renamed Bilofix. If you love LEGO as much as me, then subscribe to my channel. I post videos just like this one every single week. Anyways, getting back to the video, to show you how far LEGO's come since those One in Toys, let me tell you about the time they sent minifigures to space. Yeah, I'm being serious. Back in 2011, NASA sent a probe out to Jupiter, and on board were 3 minifigures. These 3 minifigs were all based on Greek gods, being Jupiter, his wife Juno, and Galileo. And even though they don't have any color, they're unmistakably LEGO. Unfortunately, the probe these minifigs were on wasn't ever supposed to come home. NASA sent this probe out to Jupiter to get a closer look at it, and to do that, they literally crashed the probe into the planet. It happened back in 2016, so these minifigures are long gone by now, but it's still crazy that LEGO minifigures saw Jupiter in person before a human. They never would have been able to do this if LEGO wasn't known for being extremely good at what they do. And that brings us to our next fact. Originally, LEGO bricks weren't as accurate as they are today. Don't get me wrong, they were still super good, but in 1963, LEGO changed the material they were using to make bricks, and it was way more stable than what they've been using at the time. With this new material, LEGO was able to make bricks within 1/200th of a millimeter, which for just a plastic toy is an insane accomplishment. With bricks this accurate, you could quite literally build a house with them, and funnily enough, in 2021, someone did that exact thing. Okay, I guess it wasn't exactly that, but a company called Gablock took a ton of inspiration from LEGO. They made giant insulated interlocking bricks to make building a home way less complicated. If you use these to build a house, not only could you say that your house is made out of giant LEGO bricks, but it would also take way less time. See, these bricks don't require tools at all. Literally all you have to do is build with them just like LEGO. All this talk about a LEGO house reminded me though. Did you know that LEGO has their own house in Billund, Denmark? They call it the ultimate LEGO experience, and as true as that is, it's crazy how many people don't even know that it exists. The LEGO house is basically just a giant LEGO museum, but you can do so much more there than just look around. The biggest thing they advertise are the LEGO zones, which are all labeled with different colors. It'd take a while for me to explain all of them, so if you want to know more, just go to the LEGO house website, hover explore, then click experiences. This place even has its own LEGO store, and you guessed it, there are sets at this store that can only be bought at the LEGO house, like the minifigure tribute set. Honestly, this place has a ton of secrets all on its own that you've probably never heard about, but the biggest one by far is the rumored LEGO vault. The internet will tell you that LEGO's had a bunch of different vaults in different places over the years, but one that for sure exists is the vault under the LEGO Idea House, which is actually a different museum dedicated to the history of the LEGO group, but that's a whole other story. This vault has a copy of just about every LEGO set ever made, and it's entirely underground, so it really is a vault. Video proof of this vault was uploaded on YouTube by Beyond the Brick, and this video is over 7 years old now. But would you believe me if I told you that around a year and a half ago, they visited a different LEGO vault? Apparently, the vault in the basement of the LEGO Idea House wasn't the only place where you could find every LEGO set ever made, because the same thing was done in the LEGO Archive building. Now, if I'm being transparent, there isn't a lot of information available online about this new archive building, so it's entirely possible that LEGO moved everything from the original vault to this new building. But either way, it's still sick. LEGO seems to have a lot of secrets in their home city of Billund, but there's another city on Earth with one of the coolest LEGO accomplishments ever. That city is Sydney, Australia, and it's home to the biggest LEGO store ever made. The store is just under 10,000 square feet, which is 1,500 feet bigger than the Orlando, Florida store, the second biggest LEGO store in the world. If you've ever been to a LEGO store, then you know that there are always a ton of builds out on display, and since the store in Sydney is the biggest, you know they had to have a giant build too. Their build of choice was the Sydney Harbor Bridge, made with 550,000 bricks, which took 3,600 hours to build. I'm not even sure how tall it is, but for LEGO to make something like this, the bricks would have to be pretty strong, right? Well, considering all of us have probably stepped on a brick at some point in our lives, we know those bricks are strong. But did you know that a singular LEGO brick can handle over 950 pounds of force? It's no wonder bricks don't even bend when you step on them. I mean, these things are literally engineered not to break. Speaking of engineering, LEGO bricks are so well recognized that they've been used to test the structural integrity of buildings against natural disasters. I know that sounds a little confusing, so let me explain. Basically, if a development company wants to make a new building, they need to make sure it's structurally sound. So what some of them do is make a mini version of the building they want to make out of LEGO bricks and use it to test for things like earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, or any other natural disaster that might happen. The most popular one to test for though are earthquakes, and since LEGO bricks are engineered to near perfection, they're perfect for something like this. With all of these bricks that LEGO's making, you'd honestly think they're polluting the entire planet. But did you know that LEGO factories actually run on 100% renewable energy? This is a goal that LEGO started working on way back in 2012, and they wanted to achieve it by 2020. Funnily enough though, they were actually 3 years ahead of their goal and got the factories to run on renewable energy back in 2017, so they've actually been doing it for a while now. Wholesome stuff like this is another reason why people love LEGO so much, but it doesn't end with preserving the climate. LEGO has a project called the Braille program, and since 2020, they've been helping visually impaired kids learn with LEGO bricks. In case you didn't know, Braille is a language that was created for people who can't see very well. You basically run your fingers over dots to read, and LEGO has an entire program dedicated to this. One of the easiest ways humans learn how to do something is when they're having fun. So LEGO's take on that was helping children learn Braille through playing with their bricks. See what I mean? LEGO is definitely one of the best companies the world has ever seen. So I guess it's not surprising to see that they sell 7 LEGO sets every second. Actually, scratch that. Are you kidding? 7 sets every second is genuinely out of this world. That's 604,800 sets per day. This isn't even during the holidays either. Around Christmas time, the number quadruples, and they sell 28 sets per second. The amount of sheer volume here is unbelievable, and the fact that they use renewable energy to do all this is the cherry on top. While I'm talking about insane feats in the factory, let me tell you a few more. First of all, as of 2022, LEGO produces more than 60 billion bricks and 340 million minifigures every single year. Second of all, in the build factory alone, more than 2 million LEGO elements are made every hour, which totals out to about 20 billion every year. Third of all, LEGO is the biggest tire manufacturer in the entire world. I know that one sounds crazy, but it's actually true. Back in 2010, LEGO was given that title in the Guinness Book of World Records, having made over 380 million tires. Since then, the number has only gone up, and they've been able to keep their spot at the top ever since. Honestly, I don't think anyone is ever going to dethrone LEGO from this record. There's no way another company will make enough cars to beat them. If the fact that LEGO makes tires surprises you though, then you won't believe what else they've made over the years. I'm sure you've seen LEGO keychains before, but did you know that LEGO's made board games before too? They've made a few chess sets in their time, but they have a retired theme called LEGO Games, where every set was made into a game and played by the builders. They've also made some super sick alarm clocks. Most of them are modeled after minifigures, and they're scaled up so you can actually read the time on it. Speaking of scaled up minifigures, did you know that if minifigures were scaled up to human size, they'd only be 4 feet tall? These calculations were made by a man named Tom Elfin, and I can't even begin to try and check his work. So let's just assume he's right. The next fact on my list is that the 2007 Millennium Falcon was the first LEGO set to have more than 5,000 pieces. Now, obviously these days we have a ton of sets with well over 5,000 pieces, but this old Millennium Falcon is the set that started it all. Honestly, this doesn't surprise me. LEGO Star Wars is quite literally a staple of LEGO, and the theme did a lot for the company. Like, did you know that LEGO Star Wars has the first licensed LEGO set ever? The theme started all the way back in 1999, so it's a little difficult to find exactly what set came out first, but based on what the internet is saying, this Landspeeder set was the first one. Since then, LEGO has been able to license way more sets and give us stuff we never would have been able to have before. So not only did LEGO Star Wars give us that, but they also set the stage for giant LEGO sets. But, of course, we'd be nowhere without the original LEGO bricks. But the thing about them is that the color palette was actually way smaller than you might think. Originally, LEGO only made bricks in 7 colors: white, black, gray, red, blue, yellow, and sometimes green. Now, even though this seems really random, they actually took inspiration from an artist named Piet Mondrian. Most of his art used these colors, and I guess LEGO took a liking to them. This is the LEGO Football Coca-Cola signboard from 2012, and I mean, just look at it. How in the world is this a real LEGO set? It literally only has 4 pieces, and it doesn't even come in a box, just some tiny little poly bag. This LEGO set, if you can even really call it that, is one of the biggest memes in the LEGO community, and it's definitely not for good reason. But some of the other items in this video will have your jaw on the floor, so make sure you watch all the way until the end of the video. Up next is one of the worst minifigure adaptations in all of LEGO, and funnily enough, it's actually in the Incredibles 2 theme. If I'm being honest, I've only seen the first Incredibles movie, but in the second one, they introduced this character called Brick. Because of how she's built, a big figure might not have been a bad idea, like what LEGO did for Hulk. But no, instead, this is what they made for her minifigure. I mean, like, come on, just look at this. Obviously, the proportions are way off, but even the colors are completely wrong. Brick made her debut in the Great Home Escape set, and that's the only set she's ever been in, for obvious reasons. When it comes to hated minifigures, this one is pretty high up, but there are some that are way worse than this, like LEGO Galador. This theme came out all the way back in 2002, and was based on a show called Galador that was on TV at the time. If you've never heard of this theme for some reason, allow me to present to you why it got, and still gets, so much hate. This is one of the sets in the theme. I promise I'm not trolling at all. I know what you're thinking. There's literally no way LEGO made this. It looks nothing like a LEGO set. And that, my friend, is exactly why it gets as much hate as it does. The sets in this theme are just ugly and look nothing like Lego. The only thing that gets more hate than Galador is you if you don't subscribe to my channel in the next 3 seconds. Trust me, you don't even want to know what happened to the last person that didn't subscribe. The funny thing about Lego Galador though is that for some reason, Lego had another theme around the same time that had the exact same problem. That theme is Jack Stone, and just look at this dude. Let's just say hypothetically that this theme dropped today instead of in 2001. If I walked into a store and saw this guy in a box with a Lego logo on it, I'd literally think it was fake and ask an employee if someone put him there as a prank. The craziest part about both Jack Stone and Galador, though, isn't just the fact that they exist. It's that they both had way more sets than they should have. Galador had 19 and Jack Stone had 25. I really don't know who was funding these sets back in the day, because seeing how much hate they get now would have made me think they had 5 sets between the two of them. Now, I just said that these themes have a lot of sets, but nothing gets hated on more than Lego Star Wars. I have to say though, sometimes it's justified. There's a character in Star Wars named Aldar Beto, and we saw him for the first and only time in The Phantom Menace. Obviously, this guy is the furthest thing from human, but when Lego made a set of the pod racers from that movie, you won't believe how they made him in Lego form. According to Lego, this is the Aldar Beto minifigure. And again, I'm not trolling. This is by far the most insane thing I've ever seen Lego do. Whatever this thing is, looks absolutely nothing like Aldar Beto. As much as I'd like to say it ends there, it unfortunately doesn't. A year before that Beto minifigure came out, Lego released the Mos Espa pod race set, and it was very apparent that what they did for Beto wasn't out of the ordinary. This character's name is Gasgano, and he was also racing at the pod race. Did you get a good look at him? Well, this is what Lego made him as in this set. I mean, all I can really do is sigh and shake my head. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here though, and go out on a limb and say that Lego was cutting corners like this because business was going really badly for them at that time. Bionicle saved them in 2001, and these minifigures were from the years 1999 and 2000. So I guess they really didn't want to waste the money on new molds, even though they did for the Sebulba minifigure. That's also in the Mos Espa pod race set. But whatever, let's just move on to the next item. Up next is a singular piece that was so poorly designed that it literally broke minifigure's legs. The piece I'm talking about is this utensil stand, and to be honest, I have no idea how such a small piece was able to do so much damage. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like every single minifigure explodes as soon as you put it on this piece, but a fair amount of people online have talked about how over time, this piece will genuinely just crack and break the legs on your minifigures. It's pretty obvious why this thing is so hated, so let me show you a piece that would only be hated by some very unlucky people. Lego just recently released a Mario Kart set, and as cool as it is, there's an evil little piece in this set lurking in the shadows. One of the biggest parts of Mario Kart are the items you get from the item boxes. So for the set, Lego decided to include a red shell, a green shell, and a banana. Just like always, that banana piece is both sneaky and deadly. If for some reason you were to lose this piece and find it by, I don't know, accidentally stepping on it, it would probably be the most painful thing in the world. One Reddit user was unlucky enough to experience this, and made a post saying how it was quite literally the worst Lego piece they've ever stepped on. Other users compared it to a caltrop, saying that there's no safe way for this piece to land, which is definitely true. So if you ever end up owning this piece, make sure you know where it is at all times. If not, you might just end up setting the perfect trap for yourself. Getting back to items that aren't based on luck or bad luck, I want to talk about the Lego Harry Potter Gringotts Bank set. This set is pretty new to the Harry Potter theme, and it's one that fans had been waiting on for a super long time. Overall, it's a great set. I mean, there's literally nothing wrong with it. That is, until you look above the front door to the bank. To make the sign that sits up there, you had to use stickers, which is super annoying, but nonetheless still possible. The only problem is that these stickers are super ugly. They're separated into 2 different ones, and Lego even split up the word Gringotts. I mean, seriously, Lego, TS really PMO, bro. This is such a widely known problem with this set that you can find customs online that sell the 2 stickers combined into one. This is definitely one of the uglier sticker jobs in a Lego set, but there's another side to stickers that makes this look like nothing. I mentioned it before, but stickers are probably the most annoying part about Lego sets. A theme that's infamously known for having way too many stickers in their sets is the Speed Champions theme. But there's a set in here that has stickers that are the worst. I mean the worst to put on in the history of LEGO. That set is the Lamborghini V12, and take a look at what they're telling you to do on page 55 of the instructions. Apparently, you're supposed to take this teeny tiny piece and put an even teenier and tinier sticker onto it. Twice. There's literally no way anybody is putting that sticker on straight, especially if they're an adult. I mean, if you have big hands, you probably won't even be able to peel the sticker off in the first place. As bad as these stickers are, nothing's worse than when LEGO makes something look worse just to save money. This is the first ever Sam Wilson Captain America minifigure, and it came in the Marvel Studios random bag. This is a super sick minifigure for a lot of reasons, but the most obvious one are his wings. Like, look at how cool those are. This minifig came out back in 2021, and since then, LEGO's made a new version for a different set. As much as I wish I could say it was new and improved, it absolutely was not. LEGO literally took the best part about this minifigure and made it so much worse. If we're being honest, this was all probably somehow related to money, which is one thing we just can't seem to escape with LEGO, especially when it comes to the price of certain sets. This is the Desert Skiff and Sarlacc Pit set from LEGO Star Wars, and with just 250 pieces, you'd think this set would be super cheap. It's got a low piece count, and if we're being honest, it really isn't all that cool. For some reason though, LEGO put a price tag of $80 on this set. Fans immediately took to the internet, talking about how crazy this price is. None of it seemed to make any sense, until someone realized that this set actually completes a scene from Star Wars with a different set that costs $500. In Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi, Luke ends up getting escorted to the Sarlacc Pit on Jabba's sail barge. This ship is the $500 set that I mentioned before, but the one thing nobody ever had was a Sarlacc Pit to complete the scene. Well, people put 2 and 2 together here, and realized that LEGO was charging this much because they knew how much everyone wanted a Sarlacc Pit in general, let alone to complete the scene. This obviously isn't confirmed or anything, but the set still gets a ton of hate nonetheless. Instead of talking about something so scummy, let's switch gears and talk about something that's out of LEGO's control, I think. Look at this picture someone posted on Reddit of their LEGO set. Notice anything wrong with it? Well, at first I didn't, but then I noticed that there are weird marks on every ingot and even on the stud too. So I did some digging and figured out that these marks are actually called mold marks, and every so often you'll find them on different LEGO pieces. They're basically a birthmark for a LEGO piece, but people really don't like seeing them. There are loads of posts online about how much people hate seeing mold marks and how they wish LEGO could just figure something out so they never have to see them again. This is something that never truly bothered me very much, but a lot of people think LEGO's just being lazy. I personally don't think that's true in this case. However, when it comes to the Loader Sword from the Lord of the Rings, I have a completely different opinion. This is by far the laziest way to make a LEGO sword I think I've ever seen. The only saving grace of this set is that it was an in-store exclusive in the US back in 2012. But even then, you can't deny the truth. This is just downright lazy. Loads of people online have joked about how insane it is that LEGO made a sword using these pieces, and this time I have to agree with them. There's one set in LEGO Star Wars though that just gets way too much hate, and it doesn't even make any sense. This is the First Order AT-ST set, and I know all the Star Wars fans are looking at this set in horror, but just give me a minute to explain. This set was released with the final movie of the Star Wars series, and there's a scene in this movie where the little orange droid, BB-8, pilots an AT-ST. He gets in a shootout with some stormtroopers, and the vehicle gets hit so badly that the top just falls right off. Looking back at the LEGO set, I think it's obvious enough that it's based on this scene, but people just were not having it. To this day, this is regarded as one of the worst sets in LEGO Star Wars, and I really just don't get it. I understand that an AT-ST with a head looks a lot cooler, but come on, this set is genuinely hilarious. Maybe I just have a bad character flaw, because I also think this bottle set is one of the funniest things I've seen in LEGO. It's got 8 pieces to its name, so it isn't as bad as the Coca-Cola signboard, but I think this bottle set is actually smaller. It's from the LEGO Studios theme, which hasn't seen the light of day in a really long time, so it's not like you'll ever see it on the shelves. But still, super tiny sets like this are hilarious to me. Like, why even make it at that point? Anyways, the last hated item I want to show you is actually a minifigure from the LEGO Harry Potter theme. As we've seen throughout this video, it's pretty obvious that the early 2000s were a rough time for LEGO. And while this Harry Potter minifig isn't anywhere as bad as Al Darbido, it's still pretty weird. The one I'm talking about is this Ron Weasley minifig from 2004, and I think we can all agree that his faceplate is just unsettling. It's like he wants to smile, but also wants to be angry, and kind of just ended up somewhere in the middle. A lot of people really don't like this guy because of that, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, who would want to see this faceplate in their collection? I'm curious though, what item did you hate the most in this video? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.